course of the game. On top of that, he can cover, and then in that scheme, he's just a key integral part in what they do. And you guys got to understand, I've known Les Frazier for well over half my life. I've known Sean McDermott for well over half my life. So I understand the position that that kid is playing and all the accountability that falls on his shoulders. Huge fan of Mr. Milano, and they need to give him his respect because he's just a hell of a player. Top of that, he can cover, and then when it's all said and done, when he's gonna find a way to make a play. Hell, I don't. You guys probably saw that damn interception he made last week, which it was unbelievable. It doesn't shock nor surprise me. If anybody was gonna do that, it was gonna be him. So, hats off, great player.
Talk about a guy that is respected by his opponents.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to make you answer the part of the question that EB didn't, though. When you have a player on that second level that is an actual difference maker compared to kind of the average NFL linebacker that you see walking around, even someone who's like a Jamin Davis, level player who's like turned himself into a good player, but like truly everywhere, dominant force in the run game, can cover. How does that change your offensive game plan? Chokes you up, apparently. Good gracious. You got that big old jug of water. We might need to drink a little more of it.
Yeah, so what I'd say is that he's a guy that – here, talk for a second.
So apparently this is the hardest question ever to answer for offensive minds because Eric Bieniemy wanted no part of it, and now I have asked Logan, and he's nearly died as a former tight end. So I would think that you just have to tell your quarterback, hey, be really careful. Making throws that are normally pretty easy throws because this is a guy that'll jump routes. It's a guy that'll be places you don't expect. It's a guy who can probably bait you a little bit. And in the run game, like, you're just gonna have to block him. Like, I don't know how much. Maybe this is just showing my lack of schematic ingenuity in the run game. But I think in the run game, like, it's just he's gonna shed blocks better than other people. There's not necessarily anything you can do because he's also a player that it's not like he's on the left end and you just run right.
Sure.
He's a linebacker. He's going to get everywhere.
So what I would say is, like, if I was the OC, I think there's a couple things that you think about. One, or how do I create advantageous angles in the run game, right? So everyone knows, like, combinations are got to account for defensive lineman and linebacker, but one of the things you got to think about is, like, formationally, can I position him in a way where he's like, let's say he's matching the passing strength, right? And we're going to go 3 receivers left, or 3 receivers right, 1 receiver to the left, right? Does he push more to that formation, and does he match in a specific way and bounce away from the direction that I want to run? How are his eyes versus jet sweep? How is he versus play action? I think he's excellent versus play action, but how do we kind of maximize that? Because, one thing about people who are excellent versus play action is you can show that kind of heavy play action look, get into that drop back passing, he drops into his running lane, and then you can throw a screen, right? So can you kind of subvert expectations and manage him in that way? And again, like, that's what happens when you're playing great players is you have to kind of be creative and be really detailed with your approach to get your offense in the best position to be successful and put him in a disadvantageous position. Because it's like kind of like when you played Luke Kuechly, right? His diagnostic ability was so good. So how could you kind of, let's say you got a concept you really like. Can we run it out of a different formation? Can we run it with a different personnel grouping? Can we run it with a different motion? Just so he's not immediately recognizing what's happening. You know what I'm saying? And so I think there's a little bit of that with him, with Milano. You have to kind of really be nuanced and think at the next level. Most players you can kind of think at level A. Here you got to be thinking like level B, C, D, E, F, all the way down to kind of say how do we kind of maximize what we do versus a player with these kind of instincts and this kind of physical ability because he's a very good athlete as well.
Yeah, it was interesting talking to a variety of different Buffalo folks this week. We obviously had Sal Capaccio on our podcast, who's fantastic long-time Buffalo reporter, does the sidelines. We'll see Sal out over at FedEx Field today. Matt Beauvais, his co-host on It's Always Game Day in Buffalo, also does TV up there. He came on the radio show Thursday afternoon, and I think it was Matt who said, like, look, Milano's been the guy. Like, Tremaine Edmonds used to get the love, but Milano's been that guy for a long time in that Buffalo defense, and now he's kind of the cog that holds it all together because Poyer and Hyde are still fantastic football players, but they are in year 11. They're a step slower than they used to be. Tre'Davious White, as you mentioned, is still recovering from that injury. So this Buffalo defense, has taken a step back, But, as you said, they've been thoroughly dominant on the field for less than 100 snaps this year combined in the 2 games. Shows you how good they've been at getting off the field efficiently. When we get back, we'll continue to talk about that matchup. More from the Washington side of it, though. We'll talk more about how Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin can get going today. The back split between Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson, a very interesting trend that emerged last week. Is it something that will continue this week? With Logan Paulson, I'm Craig Hoffman. We are live at Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor. Doors open at 11 if you want to come hang out in person. But other than that, just keep on listening on your radio on 106.7 The Fan, the Team 980, the free Odyssey app on the stream for both stations, and live on YouTube as well, youtube.com/@1067 The Fan and at the Team 980.
I don't have time for all clear. Hold.
Honey.
But my favorite story is, I think we were playing Cincinnati. Was it Cincinnati?
That's not what depends on the story, but maybe we were playing Cincinnati.
So Logan catches this touchdown.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was Cincinnati. Yep,
it was Cincinnati. So we put in this play, and it was like, I think we called it Hoss Juke or something like that. I can't remember what we called it in that offense, but Logan's on a seam, right? So he's our vertical threat, taking the top off the defense.
Digging out, guys.
We're talking in the week. I don't think we ever said it in the install with those guys, but they're like, listen, Logan's not even in the progression. He's taking the top off this thing. We're trying to work this little option route down. And they bust this coverage. And, I mean, he is screaming wide open.
I wasn't even supposed to be on the play. They were supposed to sub somebody else in because I thought I was too slow to run this route, just for the context here for everybody.
So he's screaming wide open. And I'm like, Matt, throw it at his back shoulder. You might hit him in stride. If you try and back shoulder him. Threw it right at him. He catches it. It was an awesome touchdown. Just the celebration afterwards was so much fun. For me, it was always fun celebrating the touchdowns with the guys that didn't score them all the time. You know? Like,
take that, Julio Jones.
Yeah. And I'm not, I'm saying that, but like, your role for us was you did the dirty work. And when you see guys that do the dirty work get rewarded for it, that was really cool. Something I'll never forget. The caveman. Yeah. And the caveman was in there in the end zone celebrating. It was awesome.
So there was this play where we call it like it was, what is it, 19 Zorro. So basically like versus a 3-4 structure with an outside linebacker who is Von Miller in this case, I would get help from the fullback, like on inside help. So I could be really aggressive on my reach, really violent to the reach. And so it was me and DY, is a physical son of a gun. And so we take Von Miller and we put him, like, no joke, in the water cooler. Like, we put him way out there on the sideline. And we were like, this guy ain't nothing. Like, we're going to, we were so fired up. And so it ended up being like a 25 or 30-yard gain. So we were all fired up. And Kyle's like, all right, let's come back to it. So, like, 2 plays later, we're running again, and we're running to the right. And I was like, oh, man, we are about to tee this dude up real quick. Just tune him up nice and good. And so I go out to get him, and I'm firing off the ball. My hat's low. I'm flat back. And I swear to God, like, he was about as close as my hand was to my face. And he just disappeared into like mist, and he like swung me, and I fell right on my face, and I just was like, oh my gosh, and like I went back and watched the film, and it was crazy how quickly he was able to like do his little basketball weave, and then like just disappear from my vision and get inside and make the tackle, and I was like, oh, so now he's upset. So then the next play, I'm like all tentative and nervous. And I felt like Vaughn did. I watched this on film, so I knew he did this. But he does a really good job of like kind of like playing it like a boxer a little bit. You know what I mean? Like kind of rope-a-doping you a little bit. So like he lets you get one, right? Where I got after him. He makes you look like an idiot. And then the next time I was super tentative on him, and he literally did like a double stick like he was going to make me miss, and then just grabbed my neck and then threw me over the pile. I was like, man, this is going to be tough. I got to like think of a plan here in the next 15 minutes so I don't look like an idiot for the rest of the game. But, you know, when you're playing elite football players like him, like there's a reason they're elite. So if you get one on them, you know, it's probably because they want. They probably because they're letting you get one. You know,
It's a trap. It's a trap.
It's a trap.
Welcome back. It is the Take Command pregame show on Burgundy and Gold Game Day, live from TAP Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. That is Logan Paulson. I am Craig Hoffman. And we are streaming live on YouTube as well, youtube.com/@theteam980 and at 1067 The Fan. All right, Logan, surprise, surprise for me when I looked at the snap counts last week as we now shift things kind of on the Washington side of the matchup we were just talking about, Washington offense versus Buffalo defense. Looked at the snap counts last week. Have you looked at them, by the way?
No, I've not.
Okay, so I can do this pop quiz style. This is my favorite. So if I'd made you guess the difference, like I'll say plus or minus 5 snaps difference between Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson. Did Robinson play more than 5 snaps than Gibson or less than 5 snaps more than Gibson, if you mean? Like, were the numbers closer than 5, farther away than 5?
The way you teased it, I would have thought that it's going to be different than what I thought. So I'm going to say they're closer than I thought. And I'm going to say that Gibson played more.
Not more,
but
he only played 3 less.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the worst setup pop quiz of all time.
Yeah, it's all right.
It's all right. Point is,
they're
Brian Robinson
close, yeah.
had 18 carries on 38 snaps. Gibson, 2 carries, but played 35 snaps last week.
Yeah.
So when you look at attacking this Buffalo defense, what roles do you think those 2 guys play? Because I think when you talk about, trying to neutralize Milano, screen game, things like that, a guy like Gibson could become really important.
No, 100%. I mean, obviously, I really think, like, they're going to play the same roles. Like, I don't think it's like a pop quiz. I think it's like one of the things, like, doing this high school offensive coordinator thing, it's like you can do all sorts of craziness, but one of the things you have to do is you have to maximize your personnel. And I think EB has identified how to maximize these 2 guys, right? I really don't want Gibson getting a lot of, like, tight zone handoffs. You know what I mean? That's not who he is. I want him to get the ball in the passing game, in space, and I want to maximize those touches. And now maybe I could call him more when he's in, like on those 35 snaps he was in or whatever you said.
Yeah.
Like I could call him more of those plays to make sure that he gets those touches, but I want to make sure that he's in those situations. And I want B-Rob to get the football. And I might even want Christian Rodriguez to get the football.
Yeah.
Because I think they're better, they're more natural runners. And so, like, let's say I've got a game plan touch in the running game for Gibson, some type of jet sweep, some type of toss crack, whatever it is. I'm okay with those. But speak to your player's skill set, and because you want to maximize the play. And me giving Gibson the ball in an inside zone is not maximizing the play.
How often do you have to do it, though, to keep a defense honest and make it so, like, oh, Gibson's in the game, watch out for goofy stuff. Robinson's in. All right, everybody get in here. It's going to be a tight zone.
I really don't think you need to do that much, honestly. I think people give defenses too much credit, honestly. Like, I really do. Like,
offensive guy says defenses are big dummies.
There's just so much stuff for them to worry about.
Yeah.
And personnel is an important part, and like there are tendencies associated with personnel, like. But ultimately, like, for example, when I was in the game, when I was playing, it was a very, very high, percentage of run. But coaches did a good job of when I was playing to say, oh, we're going to run a play-action pass. So people would be selling out versus these run looks. All these guys would be near line of scrimmage, and you get these easy throwing lanes. So, again, like, you can use that stuff to kind of max. And it's not like Gibson didn't run the football. He did run the football. It's just I don't want to do that all the time with him. And so I think that's a really good distribution. I think that's smart by EB. I think you're going to, again, and, credit to Gibson, he's done much better in pass protection this year. So all that stuff it's all good. It's all good. It's all healthy. Yeah. And that means they're not going to get too many touches. They're not going to be out of sorts. So in terms of, like, what that means for this week, I really think like one of the things I'm looking at, I was just going through the Oakland game or the Las Vegas game, is that there's a lot of opportunities against this defense. They're an aggressive team. They bring a little bit more pressure, but like at their core, they're like this cover 3 structure, right? And there are holes there. And so it's like, can you pass protect with your running backs to get to those shots? And can you capitalize when they are in these conservative coverage structures or more simplistic coverage structures? And Las Vegas wasn't able to, but I think Sam and EB have shown an ability to kind of be confident, trust the O-line, hold the football a little bit longer, and make those plays work. So I think when looking at kind of what you're describing here in terms of the backs, I think it kind of projects out to this larger picture for the offense where it's like, who do we want to be, what do we want to do, and how do we maximize us as opposed to worrying so much about them.
Right. Take Command pregame show. That's Logan Paulson. I'm Craig Hoffman here on the Team 980 and 106.7 The Fan on a burgundy and gold game day. So the protection becomes very important.
Yeah.
I think it's been interesting, again, talking to all the Buffalo folks this week. Gregory Rousseau seems to be a guy that's gotten a lot of love and that they project to not – kind of like you compared him earlier to Montez Sweat stylistically. It sounds like he's having the year that Sweat had last year.
Yeah.
Where he comes out in training camp, he looks like the guy that was promised, and he just holds it throughout the year. Like, this is who he is now. He's grown up. He's matured as a player versus being the spotty up and down guy that he was earlier in his career because he's still a very young player. So you've got him. Ed Oliver's had a fantastic start through 2 games.
You've got better last year too. Both those guys had solid years last year, and it looks like they're
continued to grow.
Yeah, they're building on it. Yeah.
Leonard Floyd has been really, really good. He's one of the NFL sack leaders. Like, he's top 5 in sacks, I think, in the last 3 years. So a super productive player. Obviously, we know. I don't want to say the offensive line has been spotty for Washington because they've been good. The protection has. That's a lot on Howell. We've spent endless amounts of time on that on the podcast explaining it. So by all means, go check out Take Command. But how does that all come into today and their ability to protect Sam, whether it's through play calling, through Sam having like a kind of shifted focus of getting the ball out, and then obviously whatever else the O-line can do in their individual one-on-one matchups.
I mean, we could really do a 3-hour show on this specifically, so I'll just try to keep it.
You would do so much talking in that 3 hours.
I would do a lot of talking, but let's just start like super simplistic. So I personally think that there's like a very clear path to like helping with edge rushers. You know what I mean? You can leave a tight end. Even just putting a tight end next to a tackle makes an edge rusher less effective because they have to negotiate a release to their rush off of the tight end, right? So that's an easy way to do it. Obviously, there's chip help. Obviously, there's play action. The one that I'm kind of curious to see how they'll handle is Ed Oliver. And you can. There's much like there's a lot of ways to handle edge rushers. There's ways to handle those interior guys. Like, for example, when you're playing Aaron Donald or Gerald McCoy or Ndamukong Suh, one of these elite kind of 3-technique style players, is you can set the slide to them, right? So do you set the slide to him all the time? And then if you're doing that, kind of like last year versus the Giants where you're setting the slide to Dexter Lawrence quite a bit, do they start pressuring to the man side more? Mm-hmm. Which is something that they do a little bit. So that's going to be interesting, kind of cat and mouse, is like how do you, again, maximize your offensive line's pass protection? And I think setting the slide is probably the best way to get that done. Just kind of coach the guard, hey, man, be a little bit slow pushing through. The center's coming to help you out. We'll get kind of a nice double team on them, easy peasy, right? But if you're going to do that, then the backs are stressed a little bit more because they're going to be picking up blitzing linebackers quite a bit. We mentioned Milano's a very good blitzer. They have some good secondary blitzers as well. So that becomes a little bit more interesting when they have multiple pieces, right? Because if you're going to double team Ed Oliver, you're in a position where now Gregory Rousseau's in a one-on-one. And I think Gregory Rousseau is so similar to Sweat in that he's a consistent rusher, but he's not quite that like elite. I can't think of a good example. Like that elite kind of guy who's like always winning, I guess.
He's not. I mean, they're different styles, but like Von Miller.
Yeah, he's not that guy yet. So
which is, by the way, why Buffalo went out and got Von Miller. Fortunately for Washington, Von continues to be rehabbing his ACL injury and is out till at least the week after next, week 5. He's on IR. Right.
So I think you can kind of survive. And again, I think Wiley's going to give up pressure. I think Leno will give up pressure to Rousseau. But it's something you can kind of handle a little bit more, especially if you're prepping the quarterback for it. If he understands kind of where the pressure is going to be coming from. And again, like we said, you can chip, you can work different kind of, moving the pocket, all those types of things, sprint rollouts, fakes. So I think there are ways, but I do think it stresses the play caller more. It stresses the play caller more to kind of be, I don't want to say be perfect, but kind of account for all these variables in the game plan, which, is in. Like it's but also when he's calling and sequencing these plays to kind of maximize his personnel.
Absolutely. All right, so we'll see how the Sam Howell and EB and everybody handles that pressure today. Can they get the ball to McLaurin, Dotson, Samuel, et cetera, down the field? Good news, Curtis Samuel, both the hip injury that limited him a little bit in practice earlier this week and the illness have passed. He is good to go for the game today. Only player out for either team, except for the ones obviously on like IR, like Von Miller, is Logan Thomas, who is out with the concussion sustained on the miraculous touchdown catch he made last week. When we get back, Kevin Sheehan joins us for his weekly hit here on the Take Command pregame show on Burgundy and Gold Game Day. It is the Take Command pregame show. We are live at Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. Logan Paulson there. Craig Hoffman here on the Team 980 and 106.7 The Fan. Of course, weekdays on the Team 980. Kevin Sheehan mans the mic from 10 to 1, and he joins us each and every Take Command pregame show at 10:30, or half hour into the show. Last week we had the wacky 4 o'clock game, Logan, but back at 1 this week. I mean, Sheehan's back at 10:30, and he joins us now. Kevin, how are you, sir?
What's up, guys? How you doing?
Doing well.
Doing well, yeah.
All right, this game is the kind of the theme of it, if you will, based off of the questioning this week of Rivera. Is it a measuring stick game? Do you believe in the measuring stick game, Kevin?
Well, it is a measuring stick game. I didn't actually discuss it in that context. To me, it's just this massive opportunity for, this franchise that's been out in the wilderness forever to have a really good start and for it not to feel anything other than legitimate. Like if they beat Buffalo today, the 3-0, you have to start talking about them as a good football team and as a contender for a playoff spot in the NFC. Now we've all watched other teams here so far, and it's early, but the Niners and the Cowboys and the Eagles are all probably, a cut above. But you beat Buffalo today, and you're in the next group of teams in the NFC, and they become a focal point of the conversation league-wide this week. So that opportunity is a big one. Measuring stick, I think they were measured a little bit last week, down 21-3 in many ways. I mean, scoring 32 points in 25 minutes of game time is an explosion of offense seen in 7 years, minimum. So that's always that's in my memory bank now the rest of the year, is that they're capable of something like that, especially in the position they were in. But to me, it's just this really big opportunity. And I hate to say that it's a no-lose situation because you only have 17 of these things, and you can't afford to lose too many of them. But unlike the opener, where there was a level of pressure to participate in the celebration that was being had by fans, and the expectation that you would beat a terrible Arizona. But I think they're going to measure up well today.
So yeah, what's your level of confidence that they can get after Buffalo? I mean, obviously, I think there would be an element of a moral victory today if it's a close game. But do you think that they can beat the Buffalo Bills? And if so, how do they do it?
I do think they can win, Logan. I think that, if you look at Buffalo, they haven't lost a lot of regular season games over the last 4 years. They've won 47 regular season games in the last 4 years, nearly 12 a year. But the lose are games against typically better defensive teams, sometimes on the road, where they contribute to their demise. I mean, it seems to be part of their 3, 4, 5 losses a year, and we've already seen it once with what they did in the Monday Night Open. And they're facing an excellent defensive football team today in their stadium on a raw, kind of wet day. And I don't know, it just feels like one of those games in which the Bills could help out and that the defense is ready to take advantage. Now, even in the games that Buffalo wins, they're really good, explosive games. Josh Allen puts it up for grabs 2 to 3 times a game. You just have to catch him. Now, for them, I was looking at them this week, they play Miami next week and then Jacksonville. So they may view this as a critical game for them, too, and one that they've got to get after losing the opener to New York. This is a big year for Buffalo because there's all this talk of the window shutting on them with where they would be salary cap wise next year if they don't get it done this year. But yeah, for me, it's more about feeling like they're really good defensively. They gave me something to think about in terms of what they can be offensively at any given moment last week. And then the opponent does tend against really good defensive teams on the road to help out.
Yeah, and again, this is an interesting point, I think, is how I know we have good defensive personnel, but in terms of them executing at a high level versus a very good offense, to me this feels like a measuring stick for the defense more than anything because, last week they gave up a ton of points, against Arizona where they had nothing, obviously looked very good, but, to me this seems like a very, very good opportunity for them, for this team to kind of say, hey, we are one of the top, 7 defenses in the NFL. Do you think they can get that done today?
There's one concern I have. I don't know if you guys have been talking about it or not, but I think they've been run on a little bit.
Sure.
They got run on in the opener. We talked about this last week. There were some creases for Connor. Now, he's a pretty good back, and I think Javonte Williams is actually a potentially great back. They got to the edges last week. Chase lost a little bit of contain on that first touchdown run. I don't know if it was him or the corner. But they've been run on a little bit. And last week, Cook, averaged over 7 yards a carry. And what you saw off of that, and I'm sure, I know you guys have watched the Buffalo game last week. Like, I didn't add it up, but it just looked weird to see Josh Allen under center as much as he was in the second half. And they, using, bootleg and some play action off the ability to run the foot, that could be problematic. So I guess I'm really confident in this defense in being a legitimate top 10 defense again. But for the next step, it's takeaways and being consistent, I think, against the run. I don't know why they got gashed in those first 3 drives the way they did. But, that, too, is in the back of my mind that they weren't good against the run early last week, falling behind by 21-3.
Kevin Sheehan, host of the Kevin Sheehan Show, with us here on the Team 980 and 106.7 The Fans, Burgundy and Gold Game Day. So you say you're confident in the defense. What about the offense? That 32-point explosion in 25 minutes, that's in the memory banks. But, that is a burst versus consistency week to week. How good is Denver's defense really? This Bills defense seems like it's real good. Logan had this great stat earlier that they've only been on the field for 94 plays so far this season.
Yeah.
What have you seen from the Washington? What's your confidence level in the Washington offense to do it against the best unit they've faced so far this year?
Yeah, I mean, Logan points out something I talked about earlier this week. I mean, the Raiders had only 39 offensive snaps in the game. They did average 6.2 yards per play, over those 39 snaps. But even before that explosion, they moved the football on those first 2 drives last week. They missed a field goal. They made a field goal. The game was clumsy at times. It was, it was hard to watch at times, and yet they did have some explosive plays. And then last week, with the exception of those 2 drives when the avalanche offensively for Denver was going on, it was a pretty good game overall offensively. So, I don't know. You got to block Ed Oliver. Milano's a playmaker. If Micah Hyde's playing, I haven't checked what the update on him is. To me, he's one of the best kind of playmakers without great athleticism that we've seen in the league over the last 6-7 years. They've got I guess it's the first real test for this offensive line, and what will be interesting to me is to see if they come after Sam Howell. If they do, maybe Eric Bieniemy's got some answers: screens, draws, bubbles, whatever. Or if they don't, are they able to get home with 4? If they are, it could be a problem today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in your estimation, which of these offensive playmakers has the biggest impact on today's game?
Which offensive playmaker? Well, I mean, I think it's going to be tough to run the ball against them, but that really hasn't been the MO anyway. I hope they stay aggressive, and I hope Sam's sharp. I hope the ball's out quickly.
Sure.
I hope it's on time. I hope that we see a lot of what we saw last week, where a lot of different guys and a lot of different guys that can make plays have the ball in their hands multiple times. And so, I mean, Logan, I didn't get a chance to listen to you this week, but I was really impressed with Bieniemy and the feel for the game last week and the plan coming in and the play calling. But if you're asking me for one player, I don't know, maybe this is the day for Jahan.
Yeah.
He's got, 6 catches in 2 games, and I think we all had high expectations for him. Maybe, if they bring pressure, they can go over the top and hit Dotson.
Considering I do 3 podcasts a week with this man, I am personally offended that you haven't listened to him this week, but I'll get over it.
You know what? I love listening to you guys. I just did not get a chance to do it this week.
So easy to fish for compliments, Logan. So easy. We just reel them right in. All right, 2 things on the way out, Kevin. First of all, away from this game, who is it what games do you like from a betting
yeah.
angle this week? We've failed the audience and not asked you that the previous 2 weeks. I know they can listen to your podcast and get the smell test and all, but what games do you like this week?
There are a couple games that just look odd. Cleveland being a 3.5-point favorite after the way they looked on Monday night against Tennessee after they beat the Chargers. So I kind of like the Browns laying the 3.5. If you're going to play that game, you buy the 0.5 point, you lay the 3. And then after Denver lost last week and Miami's looked like the greatest show on turf, laying less than a touchdown to the Broncos, everybody's playing Miami. So I'll take Denver plus the 6 in that one. And then I don't think anybody thinks that the Bears have any chance to even score. So I like them too. But of the 3, the Denver line is the weird one. Miami's looked so good, and I think Miami's one of the biggest public plays of the day. So I'll take Denver plus the.
And then straight up, who you got in the Washington-Buffalo game?
I like Washington to win outright.
Wow.
I really do. I think that this is, what it'll mean for the rest of the year, who knows? But it'll mean something. It'll mean they put 3
Could you imagine?
in the bank, and it will mean that they're a pretty good team. I think they're gonna. I think the key is +2 somewhere around there in the turnover margin, and if they can get that, I think they win the game.
Means we're going to have a fun week of radio, my friend.
Gosh, yeah.
That is what that would mean. Philly, obviously, on deck next week, but we'll see. Kevin Sheehan, you can hear him 10 to 1. Weekdays on the team, 980. Of course, the Kevin Sheehan Show podcast, fantastic as well. Thank you, sir. We will talk to you same time next week, and enjoy the games.
I will be tuned in to take command this
week. We love to see it. All right, thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
See you, boys.
All right, Kevin Sheehan, everybody. When we get back, it is time for Coach Speak. Ron Rivera was asked to kind of get the measuring stick narrative started on Wednesday. Is this a measuring stick game for his team? You'll hear his answer, and we'll translate it from Coach Speak next.
We have a new submission to the Real Things Hall of Fame. The F-35 is a fighter jet that the military has. It is very expensive. Very expensive. The F-35 program costs the U.S. government / the military over $1 trillion. Like, this is one of the most expensive things in the U.S. government's budget is the program that makes these planes. Each one is incredibly valuable and expensive. And something happened during a training mission, but this jet leaves, they go on a training mission, and it's in stealth mode, apparently, and the pilot has to eject. So the pilot's like, I'm up out of here. Pilot lands relatively safely, has, I think, an injury or two that has to be tended to, but, is alive. But then they lost the jet. So the jet disappeared from the radar. The U.S. government's like, well, we don't know where the jet is. And so the Buford, which is the suburb not suburb, it's in South Carolina. It's by Charleston. Close enough. If people are actually from there and don't want to say that and want to say it's by Hilton Head, I know I grew up in the state. Leave my geography alone for the sake of the story, which I've now made less efficient by telling you all of those things because I can't help myself. Talk about a plane crash. Hey, we're back. So the F-35 gets essentially lost, and they're like, I don't know where this very expensive warplane went. And lo and behold, sometime the next day or later that day, it crashes somewhere, and luckily no one's hurt. But this $100 million plane is gone. Whoopsies, we crashed the plane. And this is an eyewitness account from a Charleston area television station of someone who heard the crash.
In the bathroom taking a shave, and I heard a screeching, Sounded between a screech and a whistle. I said, what in the world is this? And I heard a boom. Then my whole house shook.
White says he didn't realize it was a plane at the time, so he didn't call anybody.
The first thought came to me, I said, am I supposed to see a meteorite come out of space or something? And I said, well, if the airplane, it needed to be reported, but the thing was flying is too low.
The F-35B airplane wreckage created an extensive debris field.
That voice, we gotta get a drop for the voice because it might be better than Steph Curry's.
I was gonna say, I feel like we have to do a comparison. Can I pull this off with? Yeah, okay. So I had to compare or see if I had enough channels on the board to do this. But we got Steph Curry here. We got Charlie Brown here. And we got our mans here.
His is better, though.
I think his is the best one. His is definitely, like, it's not quite Charlie Brown. It's definitely close to Steph Curry, though.
Yes.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Take Command pregame show live from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor on Burgundy and Gold game day. 106.7 The Fan, the Team 980. Streaming live on both YouTube pages as well, youtube.com/@1067 The Fan and at the Team 980. And Logan Paulson. That is where we will be post-game as well.
Yep.
So we are excited about 90 minutes after the game. You can catch us on YouTube for the Take Command postgame show, which we live stream and then put in your podcast feeds first thing tomorrow morning. So make sure that you are tuned in for that. Great reason to subscribe as soon as you do. You'll get a live notification to your phone, or it'll show up on the top of your smart TV recommendations. So it is very easy to watch that program. All right. With all of that said, it is time for Coach Speak. Junkies at the top of the hour. JP Finley at 11:30, so loaded 11 o'clock hour on the way. But Ron Rivera was asked on Wednesday whether or not this game is a measuring stick game, considering Buffalo is one of the AFC's best. Here's what the head coach of the Commanders had to say.
Pretty big. You know, it's to me, I mean, it really is. And you know, they're one of the elite teams at the AFC. I know they're 1-1, but that records don't mean anything in this situation. This is one of the elite teams coming in, and you know we've got to gear up, we've got to practice, prepare, get ourselves ready to go, and give us a great opportunity to see where we stand.
I think it's interesting because some coaches shy away from that. Some coaches are like, every game's a big game. Belichick did that this week. Mm-hmm. Belichick, by the way, 11-question press conference, answered it in less than 100 words.
Good for him, man. You know, like it's a gift. He's got a gift, and you know it's taken a long time, long career of just terse.
Kind of a masterpiece.
Yes.
We don't really care.
Yeah.
But for Rivera, embracing no, this is a big game. Very good opponent. Obviously, he's got a ton of respect for McDermott and what he's built there. His former deputy in Carolina. What do you make of the idea of the measuring stick game and of Ron's answer, kind of accepting that as like, yeah, we are measuring ourselves this week?
I mean, it is a big game. I don't know how I don't know how else you look at it, honestly. Like it's every week is a big.
You're
week.
Belichick, and you just pretend like nothing
well,
matters.
Mean, I'm sure even Belichick's internal messaging to his team is that this is an important game, and he probably conveys it in different ways. Like he doesn't say, "Oh, this is important," but he's like, he builds it up in different ways. And so I think Ron is a guy, at least since I've been covering the team, that does a pretty good job, in my opinion, of like using the media to kind of be like, hey, this is what I'm telling the team, and this is what I want the team to hear, and this is what I want the team to think about, kind of as an extension of like his team meetings. And so I think it is a big game. I don't think there's any way around it. It's a big game. I think it's also interesting that he said that at this point of the year, records don't mean anything, and I think he understands that like it's the quality of wins that you continue to accumulate, and this is just another kind of notch on the belt. And so I think it's a big game. I agree with him. I don't think there's anything overly kind of sneaky or nefarious about what he said there. I think it's, we had a show we do the game day show where I do like film breakdowns with him and stuff.
Yeah.
And he was very, very candid there too. Yes, this is a measuring stick. I was like, I don't want to call it a measuring stick game. He's like, no, call it that. That's what it is. And so he really leaned into it. And I think it is. Like, that's what it is. So there's no way around it.
As a player, if you're in that locker room, though, how are you? Like, I always think it's funny because I'm not actually pushing back on this, but then it's like, what does that mean? Well, okay, next weekend's Philadelphia. That's also a measuring stick because they're really good. But then the Thursday night Chicago, like, what is that game then, right?
Yeah.
Like, they become important for different reasons. They all,
100%.
That game, it's like, oh, we can't lose it because they're not very good. It's a home game. It's super important. You find ways every week to make it into a big game. But as you go through, when you played a 16, now a 17-game season, like, how do you feel those fluctuations in pressure and importance week to week as you self-evaluate and as you get ready for the game?
Well, I think that for me it was always pretty steady, and I say that, just because that's how I was. Like, it was like every game was super important. And, when the coach came out and said, I never really had a coach that would be like, this game's more important than another game, but you kind of know it. Like, this is the Buffalo Bills, like Kevin said.
Well, like when you're here, it's like Dallas week is always a big one.
It's a big week, or Philly week's a big week. When you're playing the Giants, it's a big deal. Those are divisional games. Like, there's nothing that needs to be said. Now, previous ownership, they'd make a big deal of it. We'd watch a video. We'd kind of do a whole thing like, oh, this is the history of the rivalry between, the Commanders and the Dallas Cowboys or whatever it is, But in this situation, like, the players know what's going on. So I think that's the other thing I appreciate about what Ron's saying. It's like, don't shy away from it. Like, it's an important game for the coaching staff. It's an important game for the players. And if you win this game, it's a big deal. I think the thing that I would say is, don't make it too big of a deal. Like, play within yourself. Like, do what you've been doing. It doesn't need to be like this crazy big lift to kind of show the nation that you're ready. It's like, just do what you've been doing at a detail level that's very, very high, and bring the emotion that's associated with a big game.
That's actually why I like the measuring stick framing, is because we want to go play our game and see what the result is.
Yeah.
Like, if we go out and play a good game and we still lose, we know that we have to get better to be there.
Yeah.
Like, that's a really easy post-game message for Rivera. If you go out and you beat them, then it's like, yeah, we played our game. Our game is good enough to beat the best.
Yeah.
Like, we are who we think we are. Obviously, if you go out and you get destroyed, it's like, okay, we thought we were pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, we need to go back and fix some stuff. And then, if you get destroyed, you obviously are going to probably have some self-imposed mistakes, things like that.
Yeah.
And you have to figure out, are these unforced errors, or are we susceptible to that level of talent? Like, that becomes a more nuanced conversation that probably doesn't fit nice and tidy in a post-game speech in the locker room.
But to your point, though, like, even if you do get killed, then it's a reevaluation. It says, like, what are some things we did in practice this week that didn't hit? What are some things that we need to emphasize more with the players? I think it's great. I think that's the right approach. Good, bad, and different. Measuring stick is probably the right thing. I think maybe kind of to your point that you said earlier is, like, isn't every game a measuring stick game? Because you play Philly next week. Yeah, it's a big game. It's a good team. Then you play the Bears, but that's a measuring stick game in a completely different way.
You're measuring different things, right? You're measuring your focus. You're measuring, your ability to emotionally get up for a game.
Correct,
that's not Buffalo or Philly or Dallas or New York, whatever. So, yeah, they're all measuring stick games. It's just what you're measuring in this one is, are we capable of truly competing with the best of the best in the NFL?
This is one of the best teams in football. There's no doubt about it. And historically they've been. Now, we'll see. I like what Ron said. The record right now doesn't really mean anything because we don't know. Like, everyone right now is making all these grand claims about every team in the NFL, but you don't know. Like, you don't really know. But based on the history, I would say, let's beat the Bills, man. Let's do that. Let's beat a team that's been a playoff contender every single year. They've been a Super Bowl contending team every single year. Let's beat that team. And then that shows kind of where our roster's at, where our quarterback's at, where our coaching staff's at. And that's a good feeling. And then next week, if we do win, can we keep our heads under control in terms of, like, our ego and play another good football game? And that to me is what this is about. Like, not just getting up for one game, getting up for like a whole season, which is what really good football teams do.
Absolutely. All right, that's Logan Paulson. I am Craig Hoffman here on Burgundy and Gold Game Days Take Command pregame show. Hour 1 flew by, now officially in the books. Looking ahead to Hour 2, you'll hear from the Sports Junkies at the top of the hour. Then J.P. Finley joins us at 11:30. We'll take a deeper dive into some of the plays from last week that were the key to the games in our Tale of the Tape at 11:15. And then coming up in the final hour of the show, we will head out live to FedEx Field where Grant Paulson will join us at 12:30. Plenty of breakdown still to come. Take a look around the league. Lots to go. Don't go anywhere. It's the Take Command pregame show on 106.7 The Fan, the Team 980, Burgundy and Gold Game Day. Doors are open here at Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. I am Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulson. This is the Take Command pregame show live on a burgundy and gold game day. Don't forget, we're streaming live on YouTube as well. So if you're out running your morning errands, taking a listen, go ahead, head home. Pop us on your smart TV. Go to the YouTube app, 106.7 The Fan or the Team 980, and you can check us out there. Each and every weekday morning on both radio stations, as well as the Monumental Sports Network, you can catch the Sports Junkies, 6 to 10 a.m. I think most people have heard of them, Logan. They've been doing it for
a long time.
27 years, I think, at this point. Radio.
Is that really how long they've been doing it?
Yeah, 27 years. And each and every Sunday morning, we get some thoughts from them. So without further ado, here is the Sports Junkies' take on today's game between the Bills and Commanders.
All right, boys, first 2-0 start for Washington, but the opponent gets much tougher. Sellout crowd at FedEx. The Buffalo Bills come into town. Josh Allen, first week, 4 turnovers. Last week looked like the Josh Allen that we all know. How nervous are you, EB, about the defense holding up against the Buffalo offense?
Well, not nearly as nervous as I was, say, a couple weeks ago. I mean, some of these defensive stands that we've had here in the last couple weeks have been like iconic, the kind of stands that we're going to talk about a decade from now.
And they've turned both games around. That game turned on Chase Young flushing the quarterback out of the pocket, and then Jamin Davis turned that game around down 21-3, forcing the fumble on Russell Wilson.
We're starting to get plays kind of like at every level, right? We talked about that this week too, like the D-line making plays, linebackers making plays, DBs, Manny Forbes getting his first interception last week. So I feel a lot better about this game than I thought I would a couple weeks ago, but I'm still very nervous. It's a high-octane team, and if Diggs and Allen boys are connecting, I think we're really going to have our work cut out for us.
And you just hope that the Josh Allen from week 1 against the Jets, who struggled, turned the ball over 3 times, that's the Josh Allen that you get, not the one that completed his first 13 passes in the game against the Raiders. You don't want that defense showing up, that stonewall Josh Jacobs. I mean, it's just a completely dominant performance by the Bills in week 2. You want that Bills version of week 1 against the Jets to show up at FedEx Field.
The thing that would be concerning for me, as if I was a Commander fan, is how Russell Wilson looked in the first half against that line, against that secondary. Now, he was sacked 7 times over the course of the game, but
they made some big plays.
First
on
half,
deep
big
throws.
plays, right? Busted coverages or whatever, or just beaten coverages. So if Russell Wilson can do that, Josh Allen is going to take advantage of
But
it.
the good news about that is they made the adjustments.
They did make the adjustments.
They dug these holes for themselves. Awful. Good news is they came back. In years past, we'd often say, oh, this team isn't built to come from behind. They need to get out to a good start or, it's over. So it's bad they're getting off to rough starts. It's great that they're resilient enough and good enough to be able to come back.
And let's be real. Look, I've been a Sam Howell skeptic in the pros. I was a fan of his when he was in college, but young quarterbacks tend to struggle. But Sam made some brilliant throws last week.
Yeah.
And the offense, with Eric Bieniemy as the offense coordinator, does look more explosive right now than it was last year. You can't deny that. So whether they fall behind or not, I think that they will score some points here against the Buffalo Bills. I just don't know if they're going to be able to keep up with what Buffalo has done. And I go to the last time they played. It was 2021. It's not like ancient history. Josh Allen had 4 touchdowns in that game. He's capable of that every week. We saw what he did last week. I think it's going to be too much for Washington to keep up with Buffalo.
I think we talked about this week too. I think James Cook offers a new element to Josh Allen and that Buffalo offense that they didn't really have last year. So if he can continue to do what he's been doing, he's averaging almost 5 yards a carry. That will be a challenge too.
Well, also with James Cook, something that Josh Allen had not done before the season, he rarely threw the ball to running backs out of the backfield. And Cook adds that along with his explosive rushing ability too. So it's just another thing you have to account for. Another thing they'll have to account for, Dalton Kincaid, the rookie tight end. He's become a bigger part of the offense, has 10 targets, I believe, through the first 2 weeks, or 10 catches, one of the two.
But if the Commanders
he's effective, and he will have a role this weekend.
If the Commanders are to win, though, I could see it being a Chase Young or Montez Sweat game-changing play. We haven't talked about that. Chase Young was a surprising factor last week with the 1.5 sacks. I mentioned the Jamin Davis fumble. That was because Chase Young was chasing the quarterback. Like, those guys could make a difference. All that said, I'm going to go Bills 27-20.
I like the Bills 27-21.
I think it's a close one. I will also pick Buffalo to win on the road, 24-20. Commanders cover.
Well, this is great because we have groupthink here. I actually have a tingle on my boys, but I don't want to jinx them. And I think this is actually great that all four of us are picking Buffalo. This is great because we never agree. You know, on something like this, it always backfires, usually. So I'll take Buffalo 27-23, but I am kind of riding the fence here with the caveat. We're free rolling here, and if Sam Howell continues to play like he has, I really like our chances.
But on the record, we all like the Bills. Hopefully we're wrong, and we're celebrating on a Victory Monday on The Fan.
All right, Logan. They all picked the Bills, but obviously everyone's hopeful. Sheehan did pick the Commanders.
Yeah.
It does. I don't know. I struggle with this because in the past, this feels like one of those games where Washington fans get their hopes up, and it's Charlie Brown kicking the football.
Yeah, I was about to say.
And you know, bam, and then you land on your back, and it hurts a whole lot. And then we swear we'll never do that again.
Yeah.
But whether it's the new ownership, or whether it's the fact that you have Sam Howell and someone you can believe in that has like an actual future at quarterback, whether it's Bieniemy, this feels different, or am I about to swing and miss again?
It does feel different. Like this offense, like think about the sequence of plays last week. You know, they mentioned Jamin Davis and the forced fumble. There's times where, since I've been covering the team when I was playing for the team, where that would happen. A play would happen, and then nothing would come of it. It would just be like the offense would go 3 and out or whatever it was.
You give the ball right back.
Yeah, and I look, and even week one when Montez Sweat has a forced fumble, and then it's like this slog fest, but the offense gets 7 points. Like that is a new thing here. And that's a new mindset. That's a new mentality. The 4th and 4 after the fumble, where Logan Thomas makes that incredible catch, right? That was something they couldn't stack it like that. When they go into halftime, the 2-minute drive for the 3 points, all those plays just stacked on top of each other are tremendous. And so that is new. But I will say, like, can they do that versus a good football team is my question. Nothing against the Broncos. I think they're going to be better than people think. Nothing against Arizona. I think that defense is better than people think. But the Bills are a different animal, right? They are a top 5 team in football. And I think, like, it's going to take a lot for them to overcome the talent, the experience, the dexterity of that roster, especially with such a young team. And I do think this team is better. There's no doubt about it. But again, and maybe I'm kind of going on my priors because, and that's the thing, we only got such a small sample size, 2 weeks.
2 weeks in.
It's hard to know if the Bills are really, really good or if they're really whatever they are.
Yeah.
But I just go on history, and you know, with them and Josh Allen at the helm, like that is you always bet on quarterbacks, right?
Right.
And he's one of the best quarterbacks in football, and I don't care what happened in week 1. Like you just look at his body of work.
I mean, I only care in that it seems like when he has a bad game, he then goes on a month-long heater, and we're only the second game in what should be a four-game heater. So, you know, you'd almost bet on Josh Allen even more because the law of averages says he has one bad one every once in a while, and he just had the bad one. So good luck forcing him to have another one. I think for me, the biggest difference in like the feel game is Bieniemy.
It's a huge factor.
It's just different with him there. And all due respect to Ron, who gets credit for empowering EB. Jack has obviously had a long, successful career, but like Eric brings a grind, a professionalism, an authority, not to mention a schematic brilliance to this team that they haven't had before. And, like, that matters. Do you have a good game plan every week? Yes. Do you have a team that's fit and in shape? Yes. Do you have a team that understands the level it takes to compete with a Buffalo? Yeah, you do, because he's pushed them there as opposed to, like, oh, that's what it looks like, and you find out when you're down 30 in the middle of the third quarter.
That's the only thing I would push back on is do they have what it takes?
They know what it takes in practice. We'll see if they do in the game.
They knew it. Like the practice standard is totally different, right? Like that. I think we can all agree on that. But there's something different when you play a really good football team, a team that again has been to that area where you're trying to go. They're consistently a 12-win football team. They've won playoff games. They're kind of that perennial super. Like, that's a different caliber of team. And you can do all the prep in the world, but it's, you know, it's that old adage, like everyone has a plan to get punched in the face. Like this punch is going to feel different. The speed of this game is going to feel a little different. Like, you know, when I was playing, I'm trying to think of who the team was at the time. Like, we played.
Well, when the famous one is New England.
Yeah, New England. We played them. They were a little bit down that year. I think Tom Brady might have even been hurt at the time.
Yeah.
But like the one, like Philadelphia, and they were really good, or whoever it was. Like we played Super Bowl caliber teams, and the game, that roster is just better.
We talked about it last week. You played Denver the year they did win the Super Bowl.
And they were really good. And we were in that game for a long time, but we just couldn't sustain it. Like, we weren't a mature enough team to kind of sustain it throughout. So I think this is gonna challenge them in a way. And that apprehension, that reluctance, I think it's smart, right? You know, you get hit in the head with a 2x4 every time you walk through a door. You're gonna duck the next time you do it, right? And that's kind of where we're at now with this team. They haven't given me enough. There's not been enough data points this year for me to be like, yes, they're going to win this game. They've grown up. They've changed. Those things are all true, but have they changed enough, I think would be my thought. And is the roster good enough? Is Sam Howell good enough to compete with Josh Allen? Because really that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And EB's obviously going to try to make that a lot easier, going to try to make it so that his task is not as hard as what the Bills will put on Josh Allen because they know he can handle it. That is ultimately one of the big keys, and that actually leads us very nicely into the tail of the tape. So we'll take a look back at some of the key plays from last week and how Washington can try to replicate success by giving small tweaks that Sean McDermott might not recognize this week. That's next on the Take Command pregame show.
At Grainger,
we have a new submission to the Real Things Hall of Fame. The F-35 is a fighter jet that the military has. It is very expensive. Very expensive. The F-35 program costs the U.S. government / the military over $1 trillion. Like, this is one of the most expensive things in the U.S. government's budget is the program that makes these planes. Each one is incredibly valuable and expensive. And something happened during a training mission, but this jet leaves, they go on a training mission, and it's in stealth mode, apparently, and the pilot has to eject. So the pilot's like, I'm up out of here. Pilot lands relatively safely, has, I think, an injury or two that has to be tended to, but, like, is alive. But then they lost the jet. So the jet disappeared from the radar. The U.S. government's like, well, we don't know where the jet is. And so the Buford, which is the suburb not suburb, it's in South Carolina. It's by Charleston. Close enough. If people are actually from there and don't want to say that and want to say it's by Hilton Head, I know I grew up in the state. Leave my geography alone for the sake of the story, which I've now made less efficient by telling you all of those things because I can't help myself. Talk about a plane crash. Hey, we're back. So the F-35 gets essentially lost, and they're like, I don't know where this very expensive warplane went. And lo and behold, sometime the next day or later that day, it crashes somewhere, and luckily no one's hurt. But this $100 million plane is gone. Whoopsies, we crashed the plane. And this is an eyewitness account from a Charleston area television station of someone who heard the crash.
In the bathroom taking a shave, and I heard a screeching, between a screech and a whistle. I said, what in the world is this? And I heard a boom. Then my whole house shook.
White says he didn't realize it was a plane at the time, so he didn't call anybody.
The first thought came to me, I said, what's it, a meteorite coming out of space or something? And I said, well, if the airplane, it needed to be reported, but the thing was flying just too low.
The F-35B airplane wreckage created an extensive debris field.
That boy, we gotta get a drop for the voice because it might be better than Steph Curry.
I was gonna say, I feel like we have to do a comparison. Can I pull this off with? Yeah, okay. So I had to compare or see if I had enough channels on the board to do this. But we got Steph Curry here. We got Charlie Brown here. And we got our mans here.
His is better, though.
I think his is the best one. His is definitely, like, it's not quite Charlie Brown. It's definitely close to Steph Curry, though.
Yes.
We'll see you tomorrow. It is the Take Command pregame show here at MGM National Harbor Tap Sports Bar. I'm Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulson. And Logan, it's time now to take a look at the tail of the tape before we head out to FedEx Field and talk to JP Finley at the bottom of the hour. Let's take a look at the touchdowns last week. We did an extensive breakdown of the screen game, if you would like that, on Take 5 earlier in the week. So you scroll back to Tuesday in the Take Command podcast feed. Of course, the podcast that Logan and I do 3 times weekly that you can subscribe to on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the free Odyssey app. We did a long breakdown on the screen game, from the Cole Turner tight end screen to the running back screens, how they got out. So let's first look at the 4th down and 4. You mentioned, this is a huge play, comes after the Jamin Davis forced fumble against Russell Wilson. They drive down the field, but get into a 4th down situation. You're down big already in this game. You've already had a bad snaps and missed a field goal, so you're just saying, screw it, let's go for it. And unfortunately, it was the play where Logan Thomas gets knocked out, but not before he makes an incredible catch on a big-time play.
Yeah, so if you're like a visual person, you need the film. Like, obviously, I put this on my Instagram, Logan_Paulson82. So if you want to go check that out while we're talking through it, that'd be awesome. But so let's just talk about that play. So basically, it's like a pull concept, and pull, at least in Kyle's terminology, is kind of a 5-yard sit, a dig behind it, and a flat, right? So they're in a bunch. The Commanders are in a bunch to the right. Logan Thomas is at the point. Jahan is the outside of the bunch, and then for my money, the back who's in the backfield is like the third element to the bunch. So Jahan runs like a little 5-yard sit. The linebacker kind of attaches to Jahan. Logan runs an outside release, so they kind of cross release there. And then he's getting to run a dig off a player with outside leverage, right? Because that's one of the brilliant things about running it from a bunch is that you can mess with defenses' leverage depending on how they match the bunch. Some people say, it's top hat coverage, which is basically in and out. So in and out is like, I take the first thing coming in, you take the first thing coming out. Right. And when you do that, and we know you're going to do that, we can have you who's taking the first thing coming in guard an out breaking route, and the guy, me, who's guarding the first thing coming out, guard an in breaking route.
Right, so you automatically put the defenders in a bad spot. And I will add, this is something they perhaps could have picked up, certainly on film, but also confirmed earlier in the game. Sure. This is why, this goes to the question I asked Bieniemy that he wanted no part of answering.
I wish we would have listened to that in coach speak.
We ran out of time, unfortunately. But basically I said, hey, when you talk about your first 15, a lot of coaches approach it differently. Your script, you're obviously looking to start fast and score, but what else are you looking at in terms of information gathering? He goes, you said it all pretty much right there.
Oh.
And I was like, it's more fun when you say it and expand. And he's like, no, I think we're good. And I was like, okay. So it is the kind of thing where...
Was he laughing or was he...
Oh, yeah, no, he was laughing. EB is great. Yeah. He was laughing, having a good time with it, but I was like, I hit it a little too on the nose. Yeah. I didn't set myself up for success.
But the reason I think the Commanders are passing a lot early in these games, and very clearly to me based off that answer and logic and smart coaching and such, is when you line things up a certain way or you run a certain route, or especially when you use different formations, the defense has a certain way, for instance, especially something specific like a bunch, they're going to defend it.
Absolutely.
So if in your first 4 plays of the game, you run something out of a bunch, you see it's this in and out coverage, you then know when we're we set up a bunch again, they're going to do this. We know what their defense is, and thus we know how to attack it.
Yeah, and I think obviously that's something you know in game. It's something you've kind of you have an idea of what they're going to do based on the film study you've done in the week. But I think you can just confirm. Like Kyle does a pretty good job of that. He's just like, we expect them to line up like this. Let's not waste our touchdown play. If they're not going to do that, what we thought. It's just kind of confirming what you saw in film.
Right, and especially in the red zone, teams have specific rules. So
sure, 100%. So basically, Logan Thomas is running an in-breaking route versus a defender on his outside leverage, and so really and then the back is running to the flat. He pulls the flat defender out, and there's really Sam could throw to either Jahan, who's breaking out, or Logan breaking in, but I think it makes sense that he throws to Logan because of the chemistry and the relationship that he has with Logan that he showed during training camp. I think he's a touch late, maybe a tick late with the throw, and that's kind of why that backside safety is able to get in the picture. But like you said, great catch by Logan, and really just understanding, having a good concept called. And the crazy thing is that's not like a complicated concept. That's a very simplistic concept. And one of the things that I love about EB's offense, and it's something that I think back to Kyle, I think back to the good offenses that Sean was like this, is that is really like a zone beating coverage concept, right? Because you get the sit, you get the hook player to match the sit, and then there's a void right behind it in that soft zone. But the way they're playing that, the Denver Broncos are playing it, is it feels like man. And you just get guys who say, if it is man, I can uncover on the sit. I can run this with the speed cut on the dig. And they win versus man, like a kind of a match principle. And I think that's the thing that separates this offense from the offense last year, is that it's, even though you probably want to call that versus zone, like I said, the guys understand how to run it versus man. And it really brings the concept to life in a way that no play caller can. As much as I can try to call the perfect play, if you don't have answers versus different coverage structures as a player, you're not going to get the right thing. So I always think back to when Kyle would do the same thing, and I think that's what makes it special. That play specifically, I think, really highlights that. And so, yeah, it's a really good play, nice play call, but it's really the coaching and the detail that they put in the week and in the offseason that makes that play excellent. And then obviously the finish by Logan is – you're not going to find a better finish, I don't think, this season on a catch. That was really outstanding.
Yeah, so you see the level of detail, you see the level of intricacy. You see, I think, also, that EB teaches and empowers his players to be players, right? You are not an X and O or a line running. You are a human being who is assessing what is happening, figure it out, and then make yourself available to the quarterback, and it's all happening like that. And by the way, not only are you doing it as the tight end, but the quarterback's doing it, and hopefully you're on the same page. When you are, you see the result.
I think that's one of the benefits of them getting 115 reps in practice is you get to work pull concept 10 times as opposed to 7, and the last 3 times you can work it versus man, and you just see the benefit. And I like the way what you said there, because Tana said something on the podcast this week where he was like, he basically said Kyle was trying to get him to run this swirl route, which is like a corner where you run like a comeback. So corner, then when you get 5 yards into the corner, you just turn it into a comeback, run right back to the quarterback. And Kyle was like, well, versus this coverage, if they're going to drop you, just run a corner because we prefer that because it's a touchdown as opposed to a 15-yard gain. And Tana had a really hard time with it because he's like, on the paper, it's drawn like this. It's drawn like a comeback, And Sean was Kyle was like, you need to overcome coaching in certain situations, right? And I think that's what it boils down to is when you watch the Kansas City offense, is all those receivers, specifically Travis Kelce, is constantly overcoming coaching, is constantly finding space. And I was listening to his podcast, and he said something I thought was brilliant. Versus certain coverages, it's just about getting open. Versus man coverages specifically, it's just about getting open in the timing of the play and finding space. And giving those guys kind of that ability to identify that, to your point, and be more than an X on a paper, moving away from an O or attacking an O, is where I think the magic of this offense, specifically in that intermediate passing game, it just really pops to me.
Right, and I think especially for a guy like Kelce in Kansas City, where if it's man, and Mahomes is then saying, all right, I'm going to pick my matchup. His matchup's always going to be Kelce, especially right now with their decline in weaponry on the outside. Kelce's by far and away going to be the best option. And so, at that point, as long as you're open on time, he's staring right at you anyway.
Yeah.
It's man-to-man coverage, so you can pick that stuff up pretty easily.
And Kelce said something brilliant too, and he's like, as long as you're not getting in the way of the concept, and that's where his brilliant. I went to Tight End University, he got to talk. That's where his brilliance is like he understands the concept in a way where he's like, and we're getting a little off topic here, but I can get open doing this and still not kill the comeback and still not kill the dig on the backside while understanding that there's space here in the middle of the field. So. And again, you're seeing tastes of that or flavoring of that on some of these concepts. And again, like it's not like a unique thing to this offense because Kyle would coach it in a very similar way. But compared to last year, where it's like we're going to run to 5 yards and sit, and you're going to run a dig, and if it's man coverage, we're going to be in trouble because we're not running it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like to see that evolution.
There's a lot more answers.
Correct. Yes.
All right, that's Logan Paulsen. I am Craig Hoffman. We'll see what kind of answers JP Finley has for our questions next. He joins us from FedEx Field on the Take Command pregame show.
But my favorite story is, I think we were playing Cincinnati. Was it Cincinnati?
That's not what depends on the story, but maybe we were playing Cincinnati.
So Logan catches this touchdown.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was Cincinnati. Yep.
It was Cincinnati. So we put in this play, and it was like, I think we called it Hoss Juke or something like that. I can't remember what we called it in that offense, but Logan's on a seam, right? So he's our vertical threat, taking the top off the defense.
Digging out, guys.
We're talking in the week. I don't think we ever said it in the install with those guys, but they're like, listen, Logan's not even in the progression. He's taking the top off this thing. We're trying to work this little option route down. And they bust this coverage. And, I mean, he is screaming wide open.
I wasn't even supposed to be on the play. They were supposed to sub somebody else in because I thought I was too slow to run this route, just for the context here for everybody.
So he's screaming wide open. And I'm like, Matt, throw it at his back shoulder. You might hit him in stride. If you try and back shoulder him. Threw it right at him. He catches it. It was an awesome touchdown. Just the celebration afterwards was so much fun. For me, it was always fun celebrating the touchdowns with the guys that didn't score them all the time. Like
take that, Julio Jones.
Yeah, and I'm not. I'm saying that, but like your role for us was you did the dirty work, and when you see guys that do the dirty work get rewarded for it, that was really cool. Something I'll never forget. The caveman.
Yeah.
And the caveman was in there in the end zone celebrating. It was awesome.
So there was this play where we call it like it was, what is it, 19 Zorro. So basically like versus a 3-4 structure with an outside linebacker who is Von Miller in this case, I would get help from the fullback, like on inside help. So I could be really aggressive on my reach, really violent to the reach. And so it was me and DY, is a physical son of a gun. And so we take Von Miller and we put him, like, no joke, in the water cooler. Like, we put him way out there on the sideline. And we were like, this guy ain't nothing. Like, we're going to, we were so fired up. And so it ended up being like a 25 or 30-yard gain. So we were all fired up. And then Kyle's like, all right, let's come back to it. So, like, 2 plays later, we're running again, and we're running to the right. And I was like, oh, man, we are about to tee this dude up real quick. Just tune him up nice and good. And so I go out to get him, and I'm firing off the ball. My hat's low. I'm flat back. And I swear to God, like, he was about as close as my hand was to my face, and he just disappeared into, like, mist. And he, like, swung me, and I fell right on my face. And I just was like, oh, my gosh. And, like, I went back and watched the film, and it was crazy how quickly he was able to, like, do his little basketball weave and then, like just disappear from my vision and get inside and make the tackle. And I was like, oh, so now he's upset. So then the next play, I'm like all tentative and nervous. And I felt like Von did. I watched this on film, so I knew he did this. But he does a really good job of, like, kind of like playing it like a boxer a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, kind of rope-a-doping you a little bit. So, like, he lets you get one, right? Where I got after him. He makes you look like an idiot. And then the next time I was super tentative on him, and he literally did like a double stick, like he was going to make me miss, and then just grabbed my neck and then threw me over the pile. I was like, man, this is going to be tough. I got to like think of a plan here in the next 15 minutes so I don't look like an idiot for the rest of the game. But, you know, when you're playing elite football players like him, like there's a reason they're elite. So if you get one on them, you know, it's probably because they want. They probably because they're letting you get one. You know,
it's a trap. It's a trap.
It's a trap.
It's the Take Command pregame show live from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor. I am Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulson. And we head to FedEx Field to talk to JP Finley in 30 seconds. But first, the inactive list is out, which means we have our injury report. The list goes something like this. KJ Henry, Trent Scott, Chris Paul, Curtis Hodges, Mitchell Tinsley, and Logan Thomas. Thomas is the lone injured player. Everyone else healthy scratches. That is your Centers for Advanced Orthopedics injury report. More physicians, more locations, more advanced. Care centered around one thing, you. Visit CFAortho.com. For Buffalo, by the way, DeMar Hamlin, Kyer Elam, Jermaine Ifedi, Alec Anderson, and Poona Ford. The other roster note is Alex Arma gets called up from the practice squad, so Curtis Hodges, as we said, is still inactive. With that, let's head out to FedEx Field to welcome in the host of B. Mitch and Finley on 106.7 The Fan. It is JP Finley. JP, what up?
What's up, boys? How we doing?
Doing well. Thanks for your time, as always, on a busy, crazy game day. We are, of course, down the road at National Harbor, so I'm guessing the weather here is similar to what it is there, though we are inside. So with Ophelia bearing down, what's it like out there? What are the conditions?
It's wet, a little sloppy, but it's nothing. I don't think it's going to make a big impact on today's game. You know, it's like drizzly, kind of rainy. It's not like coming down, pouring. So I think, you know, I've watched Josh Allen play in Buffalo. Hawk, you might have been there.
Yeah, 2019, I was there.
When we went up there,
yeah,
and the wind was howling.
Yep.
And Allen's cannon of an arm didn't even blink. Dude. I remember watching him warm up, and he would throw the ball so hard that it, like, zipped through the air, like with a fastball, like a pitcher. It was.
Did we just lose JP? That sounded like a phone going kaputs.
Is he gone?
I don't know. It seems like he's gone. So Matt will call him back. That'll be fine. It'd be funny if Josh Allen could throw a football and JP can't hold a phone. He gets back on. It's like, oh, yeah, the wind knocked it out. I actually remember. I think I was about to ask JP if it was him, but standing next to him up there. I was standing next to someone. It might have been JP. And we're sitting there just shivering, feeling like the biggest wimps on the planet because we can't even stand there.
It was raining?
No, it was just super. It was cold and windy.
Oh.
It was just one of those nasty Buffalo days where the wind is whipping. I think it eventually snowed for a little bit just because, like, the air was cold and so it started snowing. Winds are gusting like 40 miles an hour, and we're, like, you know, shivering standing there. And Allen's out there just ripping footballs, and you're like, cool. That's fantastic. I think it sounds like we maybe got JP back.
Yeah, I'm here, boys. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. So
I'm in the tunnel. I'm just going to stay still so it doesn't drop.
Okay, that sounds like a good plan. All right, so that's the weather report. Now for sports. How confident do you feel like this team is being around them all week, going against a Buffalo team that has been one of the best in the NFL for the last half decade?
You know, I think they're in a really good kind of headspace for this thing. I was listening to you guys earlier, and I agree with you. Like, kind of the measuring stick stuff, it's because there's some ambiguity to what you're measuring, they can come play this game, play well and lose, and you still feel pretty good about it. I'm not a moral victory guy, but NFL seasons are marathons, not sprints. And if they can show they're at a good spot this early in the season, you know, I think it'll just build from there. I think Ron has pressed the right buttons on this thing, and I think I'm curious if you guys think. I thought the enemy. I wasn't that impressed week one. I didn't think there was a lot of impressive stuff week one outside of, you know, the play of the defensive line maybe. But last week, I thought he showed a timing and ability. Scott Turner's kind of become a local punching bag, and I don't think that's exactly fair. But I do think where Scott struggled was in sequential play calling, like knowing when to hit. I just thought EB's ability to hit those screens last week at the perfect time was really, really encouraging. And I think there will be more of that. And I think they're all pressing the right buttons, but they're going to play a really good team. So who knows if that's enough.
Yeah, one of the things that you said there that I think is really interesting and something that I'm wrestling with is, like, what is a good performance for this team today, and, like, how would you define that? You know, you just said they don't have to win, but what do you need to see from them that says, hey, we're still heading in the right direction, or the team's heading in the right direction?
Yeah, I mean, but let's be clear. Ron better not be saying what we're saying, right? Their objective needs to be to win.
Yeah.
And none of this other stuff. I think for us it's a little different. I believe I think you want to see them, as much as we're going to get excited about Howell and the enemy and Brian Robinson and John Dotson, the strength of this team remains that defensive line. If that group, if Chase continues to play at a high level, I mean, the way Payne, Sweat, Allen have started the season is Pro Bowl, All-Pro kind of stuff. Like, everybody wants to talk about Michael Parsons. He's having a hell of a start to the season. Montez matches him stat for stat. If you go through, like, the deep sheets and the analytics, like, I think they have to continue to be driven by that defensive line. And we know Josh Allen's an incredible player. We talked about his arm strength, all of it. But he'll turn it over, man. He'll fumble it. You can force him into some bad throws. I think that's got to be how they push this thing. And that's, if they're creating havoc defensively in the backfield, I think that is the sustainable path to getting the 9 wins in the playoff berth this year. And then beyond that, I think Sam has shown tremendous growth, really going – Logan, I don't know if you remember this. We were in Baltimore last year for the preseason finale where Howell got to start, and Sam got excited by Sam's performance because he was running around and doing crazy stuff. That was not NFL quarterback caliber. Like, that game was really pretty poor. And then you fast forward to week 18 against the Cowboys, and he was a different kid. Like, he was completely different, showed more poise. And I think there's been growth just week 1 to week 2. And honestly, I even thought that Denver game, he showed from the first half to the second half, just starting to understand his internal clock, starting to get rid of the football a lot faster, just throwing it away when he realized it wasn't there. And if he can continue that kind of development, that's a pretty rapid pace to be developing. And if that continues, Washington might be out of the quarterback abyss for the first time since they had a pretty good player that the GM hated and called the wrong name.
Yeah, that GM, that was pretty low on the list of his problems, but we don't need to talk about him anymore. JP Finley is with us here on the Take Command pregame show. All right, JP, who do you got today?
I like the points. I know that.
Okay.
I think they can keep this thing close, dude. If there's 4 possible outcomes, Commanders blowout, Commanders win a tight one, Bills win a tight one, Bills blowout. I think both the blowouts off. I mean, they showed a level of explosive offense last week against a pretty good Denver defense, I would add. And I don't think that's going away. I think they're going to be able to score. I do worry about Diggs against a fairly young secondary. They're so Diggs dependent. I looked up some numbers last week. He's accounting for almost 30% of their targets. Like, if he gets going, that's going to be big trouble. But if you can slow him down, kind of messes up that Bills engine. And I think the kid Kincaid could be a problem. I think he could play. But I think if Washington gets to 24, 27 points, they're in this game.
All right, we'll see. I tend to agree with you that it's going to be close, but Diggs is
Logan one?
Yeah, might as well. He's right here. What do you say?
I haven't been able to talk to you this week. I meant to text you, dude. What do you make of that hit on Logan Thomas? Just him seeing he's officially inactive. We all knew that was coming. He's in the protocol.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't physically seen him in the building. And I hate that so much, dude. And I know you played the same position, and that kid should be suspended, dude. Like, that's the guy's life.
Yeah, I mean, I think I tend to agree with you. I tend to side with, I tend to be a guy who's like, it's really hard to play defense in the NFL. There should be a little bit of leeway. Like, sometimes, for example, where guys are dipping down, offensive players are dipping down, they get hit in the head. Like, I understand that's like a little bit of serendipity. I felt like that was one of the worst kind of targeting hits I've seen in a long time. Like, he's aiming high, he hits high. Like, there's no other, like, Logan's whole body's exposed. Like, hit that man in the stomach or the chest. So I think that was a pretty egregious penalty by him, and I do think he probably should have been suspended. But again, like, the NFL looks at a lot of different stuff, and they made the decision. I'm not going to comment on that. So
there's your answer, JP.
Yeah, thank you, boys.
All right.
Enjoy the casino. Double down.
No, that's not what our working badge says. All right, good. Go shake hands and kiss babies. That's JP Finley, everybody, with us here on the Take Command pregame show, telling us to get in lots of trouble, which is really, frankly, his brand. Yeah. All right, when we get back, well, first of all, I'll tell you coming up in the noon hour, we haven't really looked much at the Washington defense against this Buffalo offense. We definitely do need to talk about Stephon Diggs a little bit more. We will do that coming up at noon. Grant Paulson at 12:30. We'll make sure he stands in the good part of the tunnel or elsewhere in the press box, right, not wherever JP's phone dropped when he joins us from FedEx Field. But we'll go around the NFL next here on the Team 980 106.7 The Fan. This is a burgundy and gold game day.
The Team 980.
You said you think Buffalo is going to have a tougher time. Like, they're the favorite, but they're going to have a tougher time than a lot of people think. You seem to sense like a real opportunity for the Commanders here. Like, you're picking the game. I don't know how you feel about making predictions on games that you're calling, or you're calling the game. I don't know how you feel about making predictions on games that you're calling, but like, what kind of chances do you give Washington of actually doing this compared to the maybe they'll keep it close, which seems to be the overriding national narrative this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are saying, oh, yeah, they're 2-0, but who have they beaten? What they did last Sunday in Denver, I know Denver is not going to be the 72 Dolphins. They're already not. But I still was really impressed by that. I think Howell's got a lot of poise. And I don't think this is the type of group that's going to be intimidated by being an underdog at home against a team that's had a lot of success. I think that Ron Rivera will have them in a position believing they can win. And I think that's half the battle. So, I mean, I'm not gonna tell you who's gonna win the game, because if I knew that, I probably wouldn't be talking. I'd be at a better spot than calling the game. But I do think that it's going to be a good game. The weather could be a factor. I think that might help Washington a little bit. So, I think we're going to have a good one on Sunday.
We are getting tons of different reports on weather. I'm the sideline guy.
Yes.
What's going on with this system? Do you guys have any idea, or are we just
bring your poncho, bro?
Yeah, I was going to say, bring the rain gear. Hope you don't have to use it. The latest forecast, we were actually just talking about this before the show, and we said like we should talk about this on the show. So here's your bonus material on the weather. That's sports. Now let's go to the weather. The current forecast is for most of it to hit on Saturday, and for it to peter out overnight into Sunday morning, and it to be dry by the time the game starts. But I don't think that's with the storm hitting directly. If we get direct hit, you could be getting – it could be a slug, and I'd be worried about all your electrical equipment on the sideline there Sunday.
I'd be worried about Josh Allen throwing the ball and, people running, and Sam Howell throwing the ball. I mean, I like clean football, guys. Let's have some clean football. That's what I like. So, I'll bring the poncho. I'll be ready for it.
Yeah, they've been asking Rivera all week, is this a measuring stick game? And it's like, if we're measuring precipitation, that makes it a little hard to measure the football.
Take Command pregame show, 106.7 The Fan, the Team 980. We're on a burgundy and gold game day, streaming live on YouTube and the free Odyssey app as well. Logan Paulson there. I am Craig Hoffman. Thank you for watching or listening, wherever it is that you are doing such thing. We will dive deeper into the Buffalo offense and what Washington's defense can do to stop it coming up at the top of the hour. But right now, Logan, it is time to take a look around the league and give a couple thoughts and some predictions on the rest of the day's games. So, Matt, let's fire up that music, and off we go. Titans and Browns. That is one of the games that would have, obviously we're going to be headed into FedEx Field, so we're not going to watch any of these games live. That one, if that was Sunday Night Football tonight, it would be really easy for me to skip Sunday Night Football.
So
don't care about this game.
See, to me, that's one of the more compelling games because I think the Titans are a good football team, and I think the Cleveland is toying or fiddling with being a good football team. I think their defense is playing really good football. I think when you look at Myles Garrett, one of the best defenses in football. Za'Darius Smith has been a nice complementary piece to him.
Sure.
The young offensive line's developing. They got great playmakers. Deshaun Watson's developed, but I know you're not a big fan of him.
Yeah,
and I understand
to say the
why.
least.
But I think that is going to be a very.
He's also been awful.
He's been terrible, but I don't think he's been as terrible after watching that. What was that Sunday night game? When they played Pittsburgh? Was that
Monday.
Night? It wasn't as bad as I think people thought. I think there was a lot of drops. I think there was a lot of miscues. Was he great? No, but can he be better? And I think is he trending towards being better? Yes. So that's something I think is just from I think they're teams that are very, very similar, and they're like those borderline playoff teams where you're like if you get hot at the right time. So in terms of it,
they might wind up being the 7th seed.
Correct. And so I look at that game and I say to myself, was Ryan Tannehill's performance last week Fugazi, or is he cooked like he was week 1? There's a lot of stuff there that I think is really interesting. But because the teams are kind of like, and again, this is a really weak slate of games, as we'll talk about more.
Yeah.
So that one I think is of a weak slate is the strongest of a weak slate. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So here, go through. Tell me which other games you like to watch here.
I just don't think from an entertainment value standpoint that game's very fun. Also, obviously, we'll see without Nick Chubb what
absolutely
Cleveland's offense is. All right, well, let's test it. I would much rather watch Atlanta-Detroit.
This is a good one, too.
This might be my favorite game of the 1 o'clock slate because it is such a stylistic battle and differences.
Yeah.
Detroit, high-flying. I don't say pass-happy, but pass-heavy offense.
Innovative offense, yeah.
Kind of spreads the ball all over the place. Atlanta's like, we drafted a running back 8th overall, and we're going to hand it to him 25 times.
I mean, he's amazing, though. We got to watch that game in here last week, and he was doing stuff with the football that I couldn't fathom. The reactive quickness that he has, his just instinctive nature running the football, I think is really awesome. The thing about that game I think is most interesting is Desmond Ridder. And can they get some of these playmakers on the outside for Atlanta, Kyle Pitts, Drake London? Can they get those guys cooking a little bit more than they have? Because I think that offense could be so dynamic.
From an intrigue standpoint, I think Saints-Packers is fascinating because I don't know if either team's any good.
That's right.
I do feel like we're going to find out a little bit more today. Jordan Love, 3 touchdowns last week, no picks, but only 154 yards, I think it wound up being. So what is he? We're going to continue to find out. And the Saints,
all the receivers are hurt.
Yeah, Watson I think is back today, which is
awesome.
nice for them. But I think the Saints
10 consecutive games under 20 points. Defensively.
Their defense is really good, but they barely beat a Carolina team that's not any good. So you're 2-0, but in some ways you could say the same thing about the Commanders beating the Cardinals and the Broncos.
But it's also like Derek Carr. Everyone thought he was going to be this huge upgrade. He hasn't really been. So I agree. That's an awesome game. Yeah.
Broncos Dolphins.
This should be This was Kevin's pick, and I don't get it because I think the Dolphins are going to.
It's at home. I think they're going to put up 40.
Yeah.
They are without Jalen Waddle, which does hurt some, but they still got Tyreek and everybody else. We do a thing. We do our picks on the radio show on the Hoffman Show on Friday. If we come to a game that we don't really feel like there's a need to give much analysis, we just go 1, 2, 3, and then in this case it was 1, 2, 3 Dolphins.
Really?
We make our pick and move on. That was a 1, 2, 3 game.
I'm also kind of curious to see if the Broncos defense is as good as they looked against Las Vegas, which after watching Las Vegas against Buffalo may not be that big of a deal. But can they kind of step up in that situation would be interesting.
Game of the day, arguably, 2-0-2 teams, Chargers and Vikings. These are 2 teams that are in really funky spots. The Chargers have lost 2 tough games to 2 good teams.
Yeah.
Minnesota has absolutely murdered themselves with turnovers. And there's all these rumors starting to fly of well, if Minnesota just isn't good this year, do you trade Cousins in the final year of his contract to a team like New York, depending on what happens with Zach Wilson today? Like, there's a lot of potential repercussions against two teams that certainly a non-insignificant number of people picked probably to be in the Super Bowl this year.
Well, I think also Minnesota's that classic team where it's like they were in the most one-score games of anybody. Right. They get the regression this year, not quite as – I think they were in a one-score game week one that they lost. And then the Chargers are interesting because Brandon Staley might get fired if they continue these games. They have one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Like, it is a very compelling game because they're super talented teams, at least offensively Minnesota is. But, like, can they – right the ship, so to speak, and who's going to be on fire and who's going to be looking okay, sitting 2-1. So
Patriots Jets, I think this is interesting because like the Jets. Well, here's why it's interesting. The Jets defensively are very good.
They're very good.
Offensively, is Zach Wilson good enough to get them or let them be competitive, or do they need to make a move at quarterback to not sabotage what otherwise could be a good season? And Bill Belichick's record against rookie quarterbacks is like infinity and zero. Wilson plays at a pretty rookie level. And so if he looks lost, confused, and they get their butts kicked today because he turns the football over 3 times, I think the Jets need to have a discussion about moving forward with him and versus looking at him as a sunk cost and just, you lost Rodgers, but it happened in week 1. Like, do you go sign Flacco? Do you just go sign whoever? Or do you try to, push Minnesota to trade your Cousins, like one of those types of things?
Yeah, I mean, I really think this is going to be a tough evaluation point for Zach Wilson because I think Bill Belichick's going to put that man in a blender completely.
I do too.
And I think I think New England's going to just be like, hey, man, we're going to turn this game into like a 70s football game, and we're going to run the ball 60 times and assume that Zach Wilson's not going to score any points, and we're going to win this game 15-10.
And by the way, the Patriots are 0-2 coming in.
Yeah.
So not ideal for them.
Also, a lot of really compelling people, I think, defensively for them. Kayvon White, Mapu, the guy they drafted, like really kind of interesting young pieces there for New England. But I think the bigger storyline, like you said, is Zach Wilson.
Yeah, because I mean, also like, can the Jets defense put up another dominant performance, and then what does their offense do? Kind of what's that balance? Texans and Jags, 0-2 Houston, 1-1 Jacksonville. This was a 1-2-3 game for us. 1-2-3 Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add?
What's the spread here?
We got Jacksonville minus 7.5. So they're 7.5 point favorites.
Low to me. I mean, I don't know. I want to see if Jacksonville gets back on offensively the right track after kind of a
did
tough
not
week
look good last
City.
week.
Yep.
But Kansas City's defense might be good.
Yeah.
Colts and Ravens, super interesting. Would be more interesting if anybody was not. I don't want to say that nobody's playing. Lamar's playing, but Anthony Richardson out for Indianapolis.
That's a bummer.
With the concussion.
Gardner Minshew, baby.
Yep. You got J.K. Dobbins obviously out for the season. Their backup running backs out in Baltimore. Odell Beckham's out for Baltimore. So it's just a game where. Yeah, the best player on the field is the guy who used to or has an MVP trophy at home, and I don't know how interesting it gets beyond that.
Yeah, and I think I heard someone kind of make the argument in this game that Minshew might at this point be able to run the offense a little bit more effectively than Anthony Richardson, but I just really want to watch Anthony Richardson every single week because, last week he had those 2 rushing touchdowns and looked awesome. Like, can they keep building that offense around him? Can he stay healthy? Because I think of the rookie quarterbacks, surprisingly, he's looked the most effective.
He's looked really good.
He's looked really good. So I'm a little disappointed he's not going to play. Going to be a tall task for Indianapolis, I think.
All right, Panthers and Seahawks. Not a really intriguing game. Bryce Young is out. Andy Dalton is starting. The Red Rocket for Seattle. Bears and Chiefs. What a week it's been in Chicago.
Yeah.
And then you end it with having to face Mahomes.
Yeah. What if they win this game though?
That would be literally wild.
That would be incredible.
They've had so much stuff go wrong that they got robbed this week. They had $100,000 worth of equipment get stolen from Soldier Field.
The Bears?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Including like some pretty expensive lawnmowers, apparently.
Really?
And that is after their defensive coordinator resigned and may or may not have had his home raided by the FBI.
Yeah, that's a weird thing. Who's reporting that? Like, if you don't, like, that's another thing. If you're reporting that and you don't know, because you hear that he wasn't able to get that source confirmed about the home rating thing.
Yeah.
And then it came out on ESPN like 2 days ago, so like they were able to get. I don't know, just a weird deal.
Very, very bizarre. Hallis Hall was definitely not rated, but then you got the comments from Justin Fields, and then he's given his hug to an offensive coordinator, and they're smiling, winking at the cameras, which is either going to be hopefully a sign of good things to come or a meme when he gets fired next week. Cowboys and Cardinals. That's a 1-2-3 Dallas. That line is up to 12.5. Steelers and Raiders Sunday Night Football.
I got a question. You think Arizona covers that? I think they might.
The way Dallas has been playing so far this year,
defense is sneaky good, though.
Yeah, but yeah, probably. That tends to be how Vegas works. Steelers and Raiders. Vegas 3-point favorites at home. That to me is the stinkiest of fish. Steelers, Raiders. Why is Las Vegas favored in this game?
Because whatchamacallit, Pittsburgh looked terrible. Like their offense looked.
I know Matt Canada's awful
terrible.
as their OC.
Like it wasn't even like Pickett looked terrible too. You know what I'm saying? So like that maybe not so stinky, but I agree with you.
I don't know. I got bad Raiders vibes. Eagles, Bucks. Philly 5-point favorites on the road. Bucks are 2-0 though to start the season, and then really big bummer. Rams Bengals would be a great game if Joe Burrow was playing, but it is unlikely he's going to play. I don't think he's officially been ruled out yet that I have seen. But Jamar Chase, when he was talking to the media on Friday, basically was like, yeah, that guy's not playing. So that is the Sunday/Monday slate with the double Monday Nighter. And that gets us back to Washington and Buffalo. We will break down the Buffalo offense. Just how good is Josh Allen? What challenges does he uniquely present? And, oh, by the way, the Stephon Diggs guy is pretty good. We'll talk about it all next on the Take Command pregame show on a Burgundy and Gold game day.
The Team 9 and the
Hour 3 off we go on the Take Command pregame show on a Burgundy and Gold game day live from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor, which is starting to fill up. Not too many seats left at the bar as I take a peek. Plenty of tables available, though, if you want to make your way down, watch the 1 o'clock slate here. We will be here until the top of the hour. And then, Logan, we are going to skedaddle. You and I are headed to FedEx Field,
That's
sir.
right. That's
which,
right.
by the way, after the game, about 90 minutes after the final whistle, we're going to get back together.
Yep.
We're going to, instead of having headsets on, we're going to hold some microphones. I know because I'm the one that brought them.
Oh, good. 'Cause
yeah.
I forgot my headphones, so that's good.
Yeah, no, you don't have to worry about headphones. You'll be able to hear me because we'll be standing, what I was going to say is, right next to each other
That's right.
for the Take Command post-game show, our post-game podcast, our instant reaction podcast, typically what we call it. Come on, Craig. It's not like you don't host it. The instant reaction podcast, about 90 minutes post-final whistle, which will be also cool, not just because we get to stand right there and talk to each other in person as opposed to TV screens or computer screens, but also I'll be able to go to the post-game locker room and the press conferences as well. You'll obviously be listening and watching those for the work you do with the team on that post-game show. So we will have a great instant reaction show on YouTube. You can stream it live at 1067 The Fan and at the Team 980, or check the podcast tomorrow morning. Subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. Okay, Logan, Buffalo offense. They are led by a league MVP caliber quarterback. They have one of the best wide receivers in the league on the outside, and Maryland's own Stephon Diggs. And then you started talking to Buffalo people, and they're like, hey, we kind of like the running game the way this thing has been playing out this year. High-level thoughts on this Buffalo offense?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you just kind of alluded to the biggest piece there, and it's the quarterback. I think philosophically it's interesting. They've kind of changed a little bit. I think we had talked about this a little bit on the, I forget which show, the preview show this week on the podcast. And one of the things that stuck out to me there was just like they are kind of reining Josh Allen in. You know, he's got the highest completion percentage in the NFL. I think it's 75%, if I remember correctly.
Sounds about right.
But, you know, lots of, like, quick game, lots of, like, screens, bubbles, RPOs, things like that, stuff to get the ball out of his hands quickly. And, again, kind of limit all that stuff we talk about with quarterback management, where you're trying to manage kind of the difficulty of the game for them. So I think that's kind of what has been a little bit surprising to me, because it used to just be like, hey, man, Josh Allen, go cook. And, like, stand back there. You're going to scramble. You're going to run. You're going to throw the ball deep. And it was just kind of our offense is Josh Allen. And now it seems like it's aggregated a little bit more to the other positions. You mentioned the running game. That's been a big bonus. But also kind of, again, distribution to the tight end. You know, Dalton Knox. Dawson
Knox. I mess this up so often this week. Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid.
Dalton Kincaid has 10 targets and has been, their first-round pick, a guy they're trying to get involved. Like I said on the podcast, not overly impressive from a kind of winning a one-on-one situation, but he's still young, figuring it out. But that, to me, has been the biggest difference, is take a little bit off of his plate, lean on the defense a little bit more, and obviously it paid huge dividends for them last week against Las Vegas.
No doubt. It was interesting watching that Las Vegas game compared to Week 1. The time to throw way down for Josh Allen. And we had a really interesting discussion on the podcast this week about that, where I was like, I feel like he's getting the ball out quicker. You're like, I don't know, he's kind of holding on to it. And we talked it out and kind of came to the joint conclusion that there's like an anxiousness to Josh Allen in the pocket that sometimes does lead to him getting the ball out quickly to his checkdowns and being really efficient and doing the thing that his coaches want, but also can at times lead to bad decisions because he just feels like he's holding a hot potato and he's got to get rid of it, and he doesn't necessarily go through the progression as it should.
Yeah, he has like one of the longer times to throw in the NFL still, despite kind of being more efficient with the football last year. Last week. I think it speaks to kind of how inefficient he was Week 1 and how deliberate he was about scrambling around and extending plays, and he does do that. I think no matter what you do, that's going to be something he's going to do. That's part of who he is as a football player, and it paid dividends for them last week against Las Vegas. We had two or three touchdowns in the red zone where he's out of the pocket, off schedule, making tremendous throws, and leading to scores. So 3 touchdowns, all kind of similar, 21 points. So the frenetic energy that he has in the pocket is still there. The kind of hunger to make a play is still there. The off-schedule nature is still there. But they are, again, it's not a traditional Bills offense where it's like, hey, we're in the gun, we're spread out wide. Like if Josh doesn't make it cook, it's not happening. That's kind of gone. So I agree. Like there is a little bit of a more emphasis by what's the coordinator?
Oh,
Dorsey?
God. Yeah, Ken Dorsey. Yeah.
Ken Dorsey. To kind of get the ball out of his hands quickly, but there's still that thing at his core that leads to that kind of difference in perspective, with him being less effective in terms of managing his presence.
But that's the push and pull of coaching, right? Like we talked to Matt Ryan over the summer about this with Kyle Shanahan. By the way, Matt Ryan calling the game today with Andrew Catalan, Tiki Barber, and AJ Ross on CBS. It is a CBS game, too, so if you're watching on YouTube and you're planning on flipping over to whatever streaming service you use or your cable at the top of the hour, make sure you flip to CBS because you're not going to find the game on Fox. But we talked about with Matt on the podcast this spring how when he got to Atlanta with Kyle Shanahan, like there were things he did not want to do. Kyle made him, and it was the best season of his career. Right. So if the coaching from Ken Dorsey can kind of pull Josh Allen in, the right amount of pull on the reins, that can be the best version of Josh Allen, which obviously allows him to get the ball to his playmakers like Stephon Diggs. How concerned are you with Diggs against these corners? Obviously, they got good corners here in D.C., or we think we've got good corners here in D.C., but they're not, super elite, and Stephon Diggs is pretty freaking elite.
Yeah, I mean, he's a top 5 player at the position. He's very, very productive, and it shows up. He hasn't been quite as dynamic. Like, there's certain, years where you watch him and you're like, man, this is the best receiver in football.
Yeah.
I have not seen that from him yet, but, it's such a small sample size. I'm sure he's going to have opportunity to get that done. I think the thing that gives me a little bit of confidence in the matchup is the offensive line for the Bills. And we haven't talked about them a ton yet, but Spencer Brown, their right tackle, he's playing better than I think Bills fans want to give him credit for after watching him. I watched all of his drop back pass attempts. I watched, 95% of his run stuff. He's playing better than people think, but he's still not playing, he's a mid-tier right tackle in the NFL. And so versus a guy like Montez Sweat, I think that matchup favors us, right? Osiris Torrance is their right guard. I think
played well, but he's a rookie.
Yeah, I think Deron Payne's going to be able to eat him up because I think of the style of play. Osiris Torrance is a little bit slower-footed guy. Deron Payne's this kind of hyper athlete. How does that work? McGovern's a pretty good football player. I think that'll be an interesting matchup with him and Payne, just from a good matchup. Who's going to get or him and Allen, who's going to get the better of that? And then their left tackle Dawkins is he's playing well right now. There are years and times and stretches where he's not playing well.
Yeah, he's also made a couple of Pro Bowls. So.
Yeah, that's right. And so I think he's going to be a guy definitely to keep an eye on, especially if Chase is getting a lot of rushes over there because he's got a really good feel. But I do think, on the whole, that group is playing pretty good. It's weird to say that because, last I went back and looked at their grades on PFF. They all graded in the 80s. And, they're and everyone's like, oh, there's all this pressure. But Josh Allen, much like Sam Howell, is inviting some of that pressure. And I'm just hoping that our defensive front is able to kind of accelerate Josh Allen's process, take a little bit of stress off the back end. Because Stephon Diggs in a true one-on-one, given 3 seconds, is going to make you look silly. He's got a lot of ability. He's got a lot of short area quickness. He's got a lot of different tools that make him one of the best in football. So I'm hoping that the kind of the comparison, the combination of the defensive line and the secondary allow the secondary to come out on top in that matchup. And plus, with a good player like Diggs, I think it also comes down to Jack and how he schemes this up, what kind of coverage structures you're running to help insulate those guys from true one-on-one man-to-man situations.
Yeah, definitely. We've got much more on this matchup still to come over the next 45 minutes. Grant Paulson will join us with his thoughts at 12:30. But I want to continue to talk about that element of it, the schematic element that Jack Del Rio could put up against this offense next. And also, we got our second straight week, speaking of the schematic battle, on the other side, Bieniemy versus McDermott.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting because second straight week, a guy that Eric Bieniemy knows really, really well. Yeah. Not just, someone that he's faced a lot, but that 1999 Eagles team seems to been where everybody in the whole league came together.
Yeah.
Bieniemy was there with McDermott, Rivera, staff, players, etc. So familiarity from a long time ago on a personal level as well. We'll talk about some of that and how it plays into the actual game. Next, then GP at 12:30. It is the Take Command pregame show live at Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor on a burgundy and gold game day.
We have a new submission to the Real Things Hall of Fame. The F-35 is a fighter jet that the military has. It is very expensive. Very expensive. The F-35 program costs the U.S. government / the military over $1 trillion. Like, this is one of the most expensive things in the U.S. government's budget is the program that makes these planes. Each one is incredibly valuable and expensive. And something happened during a training mission, but this jet leaves, they go on a training mission, and it's in stealth mode, apparently, and the pilot has to eject. So the pilot's like, I'm up out of here. Pilot lands relatively safely, has, I think, an injury or two that has to be tended to, but, like, is alive. But then they lost the jet. So the jet disappeared from the radar. The U.S. government's like, well, we don't know where the jet is. And so the Buford, like, which is the suburb of not suburb, it's in South Carolina. It's by Charleston. Close enough. If people are actually from there and don't want to say that and want to say it's by Hilton Head, I know I grew up in the state. Leave my geography alone for the sake of the story, which I've now made less efficient by telling you all of those things because I can't help myself. Talk about a plane crash. Hey, we're back. So the F-35 gets essentially lost, and they're like, I don't know where this very expensive warplane went. And lo and behold, sometime the next day or later that day, it crashes somewhere, and luckily no one's hurt. But this $100 million plane is gone. Whoopsies. We crashed the plane. And this is an eyewitness account from a Charleston area television station of someone who heard the crash.
In the bathroom taking a shave, and I heard a screeching, between a screech and a whistle. I said, what in the world is this? And I heard a boom. Then my whole house shook.
White says he didn't realize it was a plane at the time, so he didn't call anybody.
The first thought came to me, I said, what's it, a meteorite coming out of space or something? And I said, well, if the airplane, it needed to be reported. Let the thing was flying this too low.
The F-35B airplane wreckage created an extensive debris field.
That voice, we gotta get a drop for the voice because it might be better than Steph Curry's.
I was gonna say, I feel like we have to do a comparison. Can I pull this off with? Yeah, okay. So I had to compare or see if I had enough channels on the board to do this. But we got Steph Curry here. We got Charlie Brown here. And we got our mans here.
His is better, though.
I think his is the best one. His is definitely, like, it's not quite Charlie Brown. It's definitely close to Steph Curry, though.
Yes.
We'll see you tomorrow.
It is the Take Command pregame show. We are live on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980, not just on the radio, but on YouTube as well. It's also where you can catch us post-game. And, of course, we are here in person at Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor. Be back here next weekend as well, Logan, getting ready for the Eagles game.
Yeah.
So that will be a good time. Divisional matchup. Obviously, the Eagles have looked very good to start the season. Maybe not quite as dominant, but they are still 2-0, coming off the Super Bowl run last year. For much more reaction to this, check out our post-game show on YouTube, and then I'll be on the radio all week long, 4 to 7 for the Hoffman Show. All right, so, Logan, as we get back into this Buffalo offense and the Washington defense and kind of the schematic matchup there, we talked about Jack Del Rio and what he can do to potentially slow this down, what kind of coverages he can play, what kind of fronts he can show. I think it's a really interesting week for that in that, like, Josh Allen is not the kind of guy. Let me rephrase it this way. Every team can scheme up explosive plays.
Yeah.
But I think the bigger concern is Josh Allen creating explosive plays out of nothing. So if that is a concern and you're Jack Del Rio, what kind of play calling do you want to use? What kind of coverages, what kind of complexity, or what level of complexity to make sure that you put your guys in position to not just cover for 3 seconds, but, hey, we're not in a bad spot if we have to cover for 6 seconds because this 6'5" monster is running around with his cannon arm loaded and ready to fire.
Well, the answer is there's no good way to stop that.
Okay, good for that. Let's get on to the next thing.
There's no good way to stop it. But I will say when you look at, like, the Jets, for example, and that's easy because it's the game that this season of the 2 games that the Bills looked the worst, and what I thought they did a really good job of was creating pressure with 4. They have a very dynamic kind of 8-man rotation on the defensive line, very similar to Washington. And they kind of bounced back and forth between aggressive man structures and then not necessarily match structures, but more true zone, right? Designed to take away those big plays. And, within every zone principle, there's some man elements, where you're kind of, we're going to match over here, whatever. But I do think that, to me, feels like the right idea, is if you can force Josh to be a little bit patient, a little bit, and again, that was the whole emphasis of the Week 2 game against Las Vegas. It was like, let's get Josh to be as patient as we possibly can. And I think from an offensive play calling standpoint, because the week prior he wasn't very patient. So defensively, I think you want to kind of embody that same thing. Can you get him unsettled? Can you get him to kind of say, I'm going to play conservative check down football this whole time, especially if you get a lead? I just don't think that's in him. I don't think he wants to be this guy that is just kind of check down Charlie. He wants to be making plays. That's like something that's defined him since college. So if I'm Jack, I want to mix in some stuff, some more conservative coverage structures. And everyone says, oh my gosh, we got to be worried about Cook running. I don't really care if they run the football. I really don't. They could rush the ball for 150 yards. As long as there's no explosive runs, I'm okay with it because they're taking the ball out of their best players' hands. They're taking the ball out of Stephon Diggs' hands. They're taking it out of Josh Allen's hands. And I'm okay with that. I'd much rather that in terms of limiting explosive plays.
So from a front standpoint, now we're going to get a little bit nerdy, but I'll try to explain it on a surface level best I can. That's easy to understand if you're, say, driving to FedEx Field, trying to visualize in your head as you swerve in traffic around the Beltway. Stop swerving. Drive safely. So I hear that, and I think a lot of cover 2 shells, 4-man fronts. Like, let's get out of Cinco, which is a challenge because that takes one of your best players off the field.
Yeah.
But when you're in that Cinco front, you're not really inviting the Bills to run. So 4-man fronts, cover 2 shells, which takes a guy out of the box. And, if you're Josh Allen, then you go to the line with 2 plays and one's a pass and one's a run. The math then says we should run it here. The problem is you also need to play to your own strengths. And the Cinco front has been exceptional for Washington so far this year, that 5 defensive lineman front that they call Cinco.
Well, I think that's one of the benefits of running Cinco with the personnel that they do have is that you can get to some of those 4-man structures and 4-man simulated rushes with that Cinco front because you're going to drop Chase, Montez, Casey, James into coverage, and Casey and James specifically do a great job with that. So treat them like an extra linebacker, have them be that extra hook player underneath. And I think, they have versions of the Cinco front, which is true dime. So instead of playing any linebackers, you're going to have 5 defensive linemen, and you're going to have 7 defensive backs, right? Which is feasible because Cam Curl's in the game, and, a guy like Quan, obviously I don't think he's ready yet, but he can also play in the box. Maybe Forrest plays in the box. Whatever that amalgamation, St. Juice plays in the box.
Reeves comes in.
So they do have something like that where you could say, hey, we're going to leave our 5 best guys in the field. We're going to play a lot of this this dime coverage, true dime. And I don't think that's a bad idea, honestly, because you get more speed on the field. Again, you're inviting run structures because you're playing light boxes. So I would probably – I don't know what they did. We don't get to watch practice anymore. But I would be really curious to see if that's something that they employ more this week, in addition to – you're not going to play it the whole time.
Yeah.
But in addition to some of the nickel 4-down fronts you were describing.
Quickly, before we get to Grant Paulson at the bottom of the hour, Jack was asked this week, I think by Matt Paris of the Washington Times, can you spy a guy every play? Like, how often can you actually do that? And Jack goes, as often as you want. And I think when you see Jamin Davis force the fumble on that play as a spy last week with Russell Wilson, and you know that Jamin is one of the few guys in the league that's probably capable of spying Josh Allen from a speed, size, power standpoint, how much does that become an element of the game plan
100%.
today? And also, what does that do? Because he's not in all of your packages. He's not a 100% snaps player.
Yeah. It'd be really interesting. And, again, I don't think it's something you want to do all the time, to Matt Paris's question, because, again, it makes you super predictable. And in a game like this, you want an element of unpredictability. You want an element of uncertainty from the offense. And you want to spy him. You want to make sure he stays in the pocket. I think Jamin, again, showed last week that he's kind of at a level now from a confidence and performance standpoint where he can do that. But I don't want to do that more than 15 times in a game if I don't absolutely have to. I want to make sure that we're showing him man, we're showing him zone, we're bringing simulated pressures, we're bringing actual pressures, we're doing some stuff from a complexity standpoint that A, unsettles Josh, and then B, unsettles the defensive coordinator. Holding disguises long time in the back end, showing that two-eye safety, rolling to one. Oh, no, I made the wrong can. We got an extra run player in support. All those things are going to be super – and that's why this game is so fun, because the margin for error is razor thin because he's such a good football player, and it's really going to bring the best out of the personnel, the coaching staff. And if they don't come with that, if they don't come with their best, they're probably going to lose the game. But I think they are capable of bringing that performance, and they've shown in years past they can do that. It's just this is an exceptionally difficult challenge with Josh Allen.
Definitely. All right, it's Take Command pregame show. We are live from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor, where we are filling up quickly here ahead of the 1 o'clock kicks. We get back, we will go out to FedEx Field, and Grant Paulson will join us on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980's Burgundy and Gold Game Day.
So it depends on the story, but maybe we were playing Cincinnati.
So Logan catches this touchdown.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was Cincinnati. Yep.
Cincinnati. So we put in this play, and it was like, I think we called it Hoss Juke or something like that. I can't remember what we called it in that offense, but Logan's on a seam, right? So he's our vertical threat, taking the top off the defense.
Digging out, guys.
We're talking in the week. I don't think we ever said it in the install with those guys, but they're like, listen, Logan's not even in the progression. He's taking the top off this thing. We're trying to work this little option route down. And they bust this coverage. And I mean, he is screaming wide open.
I wasn't even supposed to be on the play. They were supposed to sub somebody else in because I thought I was too slow to run this route. Just for the context here for everybody.
So he's screaming wide open. And I'm like, Matt, throw it at his back shoulder. You might hit him in stride. If you try and back shoulder him. Threw it right at him. He catches it. It was an awesome touchdown. Just the celebration afterwards was so much fun. For me, it was always fun celebrating the touchdowns with the guys that didn't score them all the time. You know, like
take that, Julio Jones.
Yeah, and I'm not. I'm saying that, but like your role for us was you did the dirty work, and when you see guys that do the dirty work get rewarded for it, that was really cool. Something I'll never forget. The caveman. Yeah. And the caveman was in there in the end zone celebrating. It was awesome.
So there was this play where we call it like it was, what is it, 19 Zorro. So basically like versus a 3-4 structure with an outside linebacker who is Von Miller in this case, I would get help from the fullback like on inside help. So I could be really aggressive on my reach, really violent to the reach. And so it's me and DY, and DY, is a physical son of a gun. And so we take Von Miller and we put him, like, no joke, in the water cooler. Like, we put him way out there on the sideline. And we were like, this guy ain't nothing. Like, we're going to, we were so fired up. And so it ended up being like a 25 or 30-yard gain. So we were all fired up. And then Kyle's like, all right, let's come back to it. So, like, 2 plays later, we're running again, and we're running to the right. And I was like, oh, man, we are about to tee this dude up real quick. Just tune him up nice and good. And so I go out to get him. And I'm firing off the ball. My hat's low. I'm flat back. And I swear to God, like he was about as close as my hand was to my face. And he just disappeared into like mist. And he like swung me and I fell right on my face. And I just was like, oh my gosh. And like I went back and watched the film, and it was crazy how quickly he was able to like do his little basketball weave and then like just disappear from my vision and get inside and make the tackle. And I was like, oh, so now he's upset. So then the next play, I'm like all tentative and nervous. And I felt like Von did, I watched this on film, so I knew he did this, but he does a really good job of like kind of like playing it like a boxer a little bit. You know what I mean? Like kind of rope-a-doping you a little bit. So like he lets you get one, right? Where I got after him. He makes you look like an idiot. And then the next time I was super tentative on him, and he literally did like a double stick, like he was going to make me miss, and then just grabbed my neck and then threw me over the pile. I was like, man, this is going to be tough. I got to like think of a plan here in the next 15 minutes so I don't look like an idiot for the rest of the game. But, when you're playing elite football players like him, like there's a reason they're elite. So if you get one on them, it's probably because they want. Probably because they're letting you get one.
It's a trap. It's a trap.
It's a trap.
It is the Take Command pregame show live from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor, where we got the vibe starting to pick up, and I guess we need to do a vibe check at FedEx Field as well. It's just a half hour till kick, and Grant Paulson joins us on a burgundy and gold game day. GP, how are you, and how is the scene at FedEx Field?
The scene is good. The tailgating is excellent. I was waddling around in the parking lot. Someone gave me a brownie, which was nice. Someone gave me a hot dog, which was also very nice of them. But things are good out here. It's dry for the moment. Everyone's got their tents up, and I think it made it through the morning probably a little better than anticipated anyway. But I got to tell you guys, I tweeted about this. I'm not sure that any fan base travels like the Bills Mafia at this point out of Buffalo. I knew that coming in. It's just crazy. Most of the people that I've talked to today were in Bills gear. I asked them, and they came from Buffalo for the game. I'm sure there are a lot of people that live here that are Bills fans, but they show up, man, and that's at every stadium, and there's going to be a lot of them today.
Yeah, no, it's definitely going to be interesting. Obviously, we're heading over there after we get done here. And it is everything feels different around this team. Obviously, Bills fans travel, we know that, but there's going to be enough Commanders fans that we got to sell out today. It's 2-0 record, first time since 2011. 3-0 be the first time since 2005. You got EB, you got Hope at the quarterback position, but it is that measuring stick kind of thing that we've been talking about all show long. Grant, where do you kind of come down on that of whether or not this Commanders team can really measure up to a team like the Bills and compete today, whether they win or not? Obviously, we'll have to find out. But how confident are you that they can truly go toe-to-toe and compete with a team of Buffalo's caliber?
I think their defensive line, Craig, is so good that if it plays well, they'll be in every single game. And so if their D-line takes over, and I don't think it'll be to the extent that it did here against Arizona 2 weeks ago or even last week, when, in the second half, I thought Chase Young was excellent and Montez Sweat was dominant, and they handed Russell Wilson his lunch back and decided to just steal the game from the Broncos. But they're that good, right? Sweat, Young, Allen, Payne. These are four guys that are going to be in the Pro Bowl mix. I think Payne and Sweat are both playing at all pro-type levels. they've been outstanding. So when you have that caliber of a D-line, and it's why they've sunk all the assets between picks and money that they have into it, that's a game-wrecking position where you can kind of take over. So that's why I give them a chance today. But I think the first part of your question was kind of what I'm so intrigued by today, which is this notion that I'm starting to subscribe to, that everything feels different, because it does. People are more optimistic and energetic and happy about this team. But they almost lost to Arizona, and they were down 18 in Denver. So it's kind of eye of the beholder, right? That's the kind of game I don't think they win, where they take the good fortune of the Jamin Davis takeaway and actually turn the entire game on its head. That hasn't always happened. But we're seeing what we want to. And after today, I'll say if they beat the Bills, then it's just reality. It's not like looking for something anymore. This is better. This is different. They will be 3-0 for the first time since I was in high school back in 2005.
So, I mean, obviously there's the defense and defensive line like you alluded to, but obviously there's a young quarterback going to get a start against a very, very talented, very, very well-coached defense. What's your expectation for Sam today?
It's a good question, Logan. I don't know how you feel about this. I haven't gotten a chance to listen a ton this morning, but to me, this is like the matchup that matters more, and people aren't talking as much about it.
Right.
The Bills' defense has not played at I don't think at the level that they're going to in terms of yards per play. They're 29th. I think that's completely misleading, though. They've barely been on the field. Buffalo's number one in time of possession, over 36 minutes a game. And so because they gave up a 80-yard run to Breece Hall and another 30-yard run, and they've given up, I think, 4 plays now of 30-plus, and they've been on the field less than any other team through just 8 quarters, the sample says that they're one of the worst defenses in the league in YPP. Here's the thing, though. They generate takeaways. They're athletic. And they can, well, they may not get to the quarterback. They can dial things up to I think, confuse Sam Howell a little bit. He came out today. Eric Bieniemy came out, or I should say this week, and both said they kind of think Buffalo's going to run their defense and not necessarily throw a bunch of quirky looks at him, and that might be true. But I just think that they've got better players than they have faced at any point. So for me, I want a continuation of what we've seen with the make it easy on Sam Howell. But if you look right now, he's 29th out of 32 starting quarterbacks in the league in aggressiveness percentage, meaning throwing the ball into small windows where a defender's within a yard of a receiver. That speaks to guys getting open, obviously, in this scheme, but it also is that screens. You know, that's easily designed throws. He is right now 25th among starting quarterbacks in the average intended air yards. Like, these are good things, not bad things for me. This means EB is understanding that you need to help this young quarterback. They're not putting too much on his plate. He's 14th in terms of expected completion percentage, like out of his hand what should be a completion. So they're not really asking him to make overly difficult decisions, and I think that's got to continue today against this defense.
Grant Paulson, of course, co-host of Grant and Danny, 2 to 6:30 each and every weekday on 106.7 The Fan, with us on The Fan and the Team 980 for a Burgundy and Gold game day this here, the Take Command pregame show. The run-pass split has certainly been in the eye of anyone looking at the play calling the last couple of weeks. They started super pass-heavy last week. And the first half, you know, and Logan and I talked about this during the week, like there's some RPOs where Sam should have handed it off. So it shouldn't have been quite this bad. But ultimately it was 33 dropbacks to 7 rushes. When you talk about the job EB has done, do you feel like that is an area where potentially there can be improvement, or are you good with that heavy of a skew?
I'm always good with what.
Yeah, there he goes.
You know, I think the question is, would they have been better off doing something else? Here's what people don't acknowledge, though, when they talk about those numbers, right? And they say, you got to run it more. They ran it effectively in the second half. Well, part of why you're running it effectively in the second half is because you set up the run with some of the throwing, right? You've shown them a lot of things now they're defending. They've got DBs in the game that are playing leverages and trying to get into space because a guy like Jahan Dotson is 7th in the NFL and the cushion he's creating, and you're throwing it on early down so much. So you're not really able to load the box. You're not able to try to stop the run in the same way. I've long been a proponent of kind of throwing to set up the run. I also think that the short passing game is the same as the running game. Like, people determine, you know, what a play is. Is it pass, is it run? They file it into 2 drawers. If you're throwing it to a running back at a 90% clip, he's catching it out of the backfield, how much? Just walk over and hand it. What's the difference, right? So I really don't have a problem at all with how they've operated. I think they've gotten into some trouble occasionally getting behind the sticks after penalties and things. But they've done that for years while running it on 1st down and 10 and 2nd down and 10 with Scott Turner as well. So I really don't have an issue at all. I mean, they're coming off of their first 35-point offensively in 52 games. So I'm not going to critique or question a whole lot of how they got there. I think the process has been pretty good. The one thing I'll say is I think Sam Howell's got to help them avoid sacks. He has not done a good enough job of that. He's dead last in the NFL right now at pressure to sack percentage, meaning when there's pressure, how often does it become a sack? Really good veterans throw the ball away, spike the ball into the ground, leave the pocket and scramble. He is turning pressures into a sack at the highest percentage in the NFL right now, which is normal for a young guy. This is not a major knock as much as it is something he's got to continue to clean up.
Yeah, and I did think he got better at that last week than he was from week 1, which is great to see. But again, like I love your insight there in terms of passing the football. I think that's the right way to look at it. And especially today, the thing that kind of gets me going is a little bit the weather. You know, it's really hard to throw the football like that when the weather's terrible. Do you still abide by that same thing given the weather constraints?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, right now it's not raining. Like if there's a driving rain, then I tend to agree with you.
Yeah.
But if it's kind of just like wet and sloppy, then to me the advantage is on the receiver knowing where he's going.
Sure.
Than it is the DB on the same surface. I mean, we saw even when it was raining in the second half in like a legitimate rainstorm when you and I were sitting side by side against the Cardinals in the third quarter last week, they kind of came out and threw it. And you saw DBs trying to plant and stop, and they were having a problem. And they were running those 5-7 yard stop routes to big-bodied tight ends and just kind of catching it with their chest. Like, I don't hate that. Again, it's got to be short. It's got to be fairly high percentage for me. I don't want to start swinging the ball around downfield in the rain. But I don't think it's going to rain a ton. I think there's going to be some spurts during the game. But I'm not sure that it's going to affect, like, play calling. The other thing is you don't want to become obvious. Like, if the weather's bad, the Bills know that too, and now I don't want to have a bunch of pushing matches where Brian Robinson's averaging 2.9 falling into a pile of 70 bodies. So I think you just kind of got to operate. I don't know that the weather's going to be so bad that what they want to do, getting the ball out of his hands, a lot of throws within 8, 9, 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, if that's going to be overly inefficient in the weather.
All right, GP, last one. You know what it is. Who you got?
I've got the Bills. This will be the first week that, I think there's a chance this one could get away from them. But what I'll say is I do think the D-line has a chance to steal the game, and then the story tomorrow is, A, they're good, and B, oh, my goodness, they can beat anybody with this group. I think Buffalo wins. I'm going to say 27-20. I think they end up just making too many plays, and I'm worried that Josh Allen had his bad game for the month. That one,
yes.
I don't know if you replicate another dud this quickly after the way he played in week 1. He's probably better than having another one of those.
That has been his trajectory over his career, especially since he elevated to this level. One bad one, couple of really good ones, and we're not far enough away from the bad one to not be in the heater, so we will see. All right, GP, see you in I don't know, half an hour or so. I'm assuming I haven't been to FedEx Field since 2019. Is my seat still next to yours in the press box? How does that work?
Your seat, well, I got good news and bad news. I think you're right next to me. I think you might even be sandwiched in between me and Russell, so I'm sorry about that.
Okay, Logan, hopefully you're not solo after the game. If I get in the middle of a fight between those two, good gracious. All right, we'll sort that out when I get there.
Offensive line, it's me, Russell, and Mitch Tischler, and then somehow you. So maybe you're going to have to be in the gun behind us or something like that.
Okay, we'll figure out the formation. We'll figure out the formation when I get there. Thank you. I'll see you soon, and thanks for your time here on the show. All right, that is Grant Paulsen, everybody, with us here on the Team 980 and 106.7 The Fan. This is, of course, Burgundy and Gold Game Day, the Take Command pregame show. Burgundy and Gold Game Day Live follows us on the Team 980. We will check in with the boys and make our predictions for the game next here on the Take Command pregame show.
You said you think Buffalo is going to have a tougher time. Like, they're the favorite, but they're going to have a tougher time than a lot of people think. You seem to sense like a real opportunity for the Commanders here. Like, you're picking the game. I don't know how you feel about making predictions on games that you're calling, or you're calling the game. I don't know how you feel about making predictions on games that you're calling. But like, what kind of chances do you give Washington of actually doing this compared to maybe they'll keep it close, which seems to be the overriding national narrative this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are saying, oh, yeah, they're 2-0, but who have they beaten? You know, what they did last Sunday in Denver, I know Denver is not going to be the 72 Dolphins. They're already not. But I still was really impressed by that. I think Howell's got a lot of poise. And I don't think this is the type of group that's going to be intimidated by being an underdog at home against a team that's had a lot of success. I think that Ron Rivera will have them in a position believing they can win. And I think that's half the battle. So, I mean, I'm not gonna tell you who's gonna win the game, because if I knew that, I probably wouldn't be talking. I'd be at a better spot calling the game. But I do think that it's going to be a good game. The weather could be a factor. I think that might help Washington a little bit. So, you know, I think we're going to have a good one on Sunday.
We are getting tons of different reports on weather. I'm the sideline guy.
Yes.
What's going on with this system? Do you guys have any idea, or are we just
bring your poncho, bro?
Yeah, I was going to say, bring the rain gear. Hope you don't have to use it. The latest forecast, we were actually just talking about this before the show, and we said like we should talk about this on the show. So here's your bonus material on the weather. That's sports. Now let's go to the weather. The current forecast is for most of it to hit on Saturday, and for it to peter out overnight into Sunday morning, and it to be dry by the time the game starts. But I don't think that's with the storm hitting directly. If we get direct hit, you could be getting it could be a slug, and I'd be worried about all your electrical equipment on the sideline there Sunday.
I'd be worried about Josh Allen throwing the ball, and, you know, people running, and Sam Howell throwing the ball. I mean, I like clean football. You know, guys, let's have some clean football. That's what I like. So, all right, I'll bring the poncho. I'll be ready for it.
Yeah, they've been asking Rivera all week, is this a measuring stick game? And it's like, if we're measuring precipitation, that makes it a little hard to measure the football. Wrapping up here on the Take Command pregame show live from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor. If you missed us this week, we'll be back next week, same time, same place, ahead of the Commanders' Week 4 matchup with the Eagles. And, of course, do not miss us post-game, youtube.com/@1067thefan and at the Team 980 for the Take Command post-game show. That podcast also will be out in audio form in the morning. And then if you're like, what is this Take Command thing? If you still somehow people have missed it, Logan, people are still learning. It's a podcast we do 3 times a week. The post-game pod, the tape review pod, which comes out Wednesday mornings on your audio feeds, and then the preview Friday. So make sure you're subscribed to Take Command wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Logan, as that is Logan Paulson. I am Greg Hoffman. Wrapping up Denton Day, Linnell Willingham following us on the Team 980, of course, Nationals baseball on 106.7 The Fan. We'll bring those guys in just a moment. Denton and Linnell. We're not gonna, Charlie and Dave, I'm sure they have thoughts from the Nationals broadcast booth, but we're not going to bring them into the pregame. You get it.
Keys to the game. Washington wins today if they can what?
Washington wins today if they can create pressure with a 4-man rush and get Josh Allen confused. Defensively, that's how they win. Offensively, they win if they can, again, just kind of play a clean brand of football. I think they've done a good job offensively. Quite honestly.
It's not exciting analysis, but Washington has moved the ball well this
year.
Effective. Almost without question or without hiccups, except for when they turn the ball over.
Yeah, and so that's what I would say. I'd say there's nothing that I would give in terms of feedback to the offense other than perhaps maybe EB can call plays that are a little bit quicker developing earlier in the game to let the offensive line settle in. That's a very minute criticism because I think a little bit of that's Sam Howell holding the ball. And like I said when Grant called in, I think they're getting better in that, but I really think that's what it comes down to. Creating pressure with a 4-man rush, presenting different coverage structures defensively to kind of confuse and contain Josh Allen, and then offensively kind of do what you've been doing because, we didn't really talk about this from a schematic standpoint too much, but the Bills are not overly complicated. They have a cover 3 kind of base structure. They sprinkle in some man. They bring some pressures, but it's not like this crazy bombs over Baghdad style of pressure. So it all should be able to be handled relatively well, and then can you win your one-on-one matchups? That's really what it boils down to.
Here's something that I think is interesting, the one kind of facet that we haven't talked about yet. Ironically, the Bills' defense is more like Ron Rivera's defense than the Commanders' defense.
Correct, yes.
Sean McDermott, who used to be the defensive coordinator for Ron in Carolina, brought that defense and installed it in Buffalo. Leslie Frazier has been running it the last bunch of years. Frazier is taking the year off. McDermott, but it was the same scheme.
Yeah.
McDermott is now calling it.
Yeah.
As opposed to when Ron came here from Carolina, he let Del Rio install his defense. But it means Ron has extreme familiarity with what Sean McDermott is trying to do. How much does that play in to this matchup? Not to mention Eric Bieniemy's faced Buffalo every single year when he was in Kansas City.
Yeah, I think it's huge. Whenever you have someone on staff who's had some familiarity with the defense, it's from an offensive perspective, it's awesome. Because you can be like, hey, man, what are they, what's the coaching point here? What's the philosophy here? What's the call here? And it just allows you to kind of be like, oh, I see what they're trying to do. And it just brings it into high definition. I remember one year, Wes Phillips had just come from Dallas and was basically installing kind of their offensive playbook to the defense. And it just let the defensive coordinator say, oh, I thought they were going to do this, but if we hold it a little bit longer, we can get it. Understanding Romo's perspective. And it's the same thing offensively. It's like, hey, man, in these situations, what is he trying to do with this pressure? What's he trying to do with this coverage? How's he coaching the corner? And you're like, okay, now I know how he's getting coached. It's like the thing we learned about on the play caller series with Jordan Rodriguez.
Yeah.
It's like you want to increase your familiarity with the opposing team's defense because it allows you to break them that much more effectively. So having Ron in the building, I think, is a huge, huge advantage.
All right, let's bring in back in studio in our Navy Yard DC studios. Denton Day joins us. Linnell on his way, but Denton is with us now. Denton, I'll ask you the same question. Washington wins today if they can what?
Washington wins if they can stop Sam Howell. I think that's what it's going to.
Josh Allen.
Stop Sam Howell. That's like you're thinking big brain there.
Yeah, reverse psychology. I don't know what we're doing. But stop Josh Allen.
Yeah, they can stop Josh Allen and make him attempt to go hero ball. When he goes hero ball, that's usually when the Bills suffer a little bit. So if they can stop him and try and make him to push and to kind of go a little bit harder than he needs to, I think that's what gives them the advantage this afternoon.
Yeah, I like that strategy of kind of forcing Josh Allen. It sounds crazy. Force Josh Allen to beat you. Because he's Josh Allen. He's so good at football. But
the style that he's trying to beat you with, I think, is what you're both trying to say. You're trying to get him to feel a little desperate and press. When he's pressing, he's not good. When he's in his bag, watch out, man. He's one of the best players in football. So,
what happens though if you try to get him sped up, and all of a sudden he's doing the hero ball thing, but he's having a day where he's locked in.
Yeah.
And do you just lose, or is there an adjustment you can make to be like, all right, never mind, take the ball back out of his hands?
I don't know, man. When really good football players like Mahomes, Allen, Lamar to a certain extent, who else is Joe Burrow, when they're on, there's not a lot you can do. I think what I would say is just die a slow death, and hopefully your offense can kind of support you. And so, instead of making it a 2-play sequence, make it a 10-play sequence. And again, that's not ideal. Like the defensively, you don't want them scoring at all. But I'd say when he gets in his bag, like that's what you're hoping for. Is just make it a little bit longer so your offense can get a break and come back out and support you. So
all right, picks around the room, and then Denton, we're going to hand things over to you off into the in-game show at the top of the hour. Denton, who you got today?
I do have the Commanders winning.
Look at you.
There's something about this. I really loved what the defense did last week, but I was really impressed with the offense more than anything, scoring the amount of points they did in that very short time. Now, hopefully it doesn't take them being down 21-3 to really kick it into gear offensively, but I think the Commanders get it done by a score of 24-20.
Logan?
24-20. Wow, Denton, you are – I want so badly for the Commanders to win, but I'm not – I've been hit in the head with 2x4 too many times. I'm going to duck this time. So I'm going to say 31-24 Buffalo wins.
So on Friday's show, I had just read when we made our picks a weather report that said wind gusts were going to be like 50 miles an hour, and I was like, I don't know. Now that we know that the weather is going to be far more cooperative, I will stick with the Bills winning the game. I'll just change the score that I think I gave on Friday. More of a 27-24 kind of game than a 2017, 17-14 kind of game. Because if the ball is in the air, it's not going to get blown off to the sideline instantly. So I'll take Buffalo today. But I do think the Commanders can compete. I do think they can win, which is something that I think going into games last year against teams of this caliber was certainly not how we felt. No matter how it goes, we'll be talking about it on the post-game show. Logan and I will be online on YouTube at 106.7 The Fan and at the Team 980 approximately 90 minutes after the final whistle. We say goodbye to the YouTube audience now as well here on the Take Command pregame show. Denton's going to take things to the top of the hour and then officially flip it over on the radio to Burgundy and Gold Game Day Live on the Team 980. Denton, thank you, sir, for stepping up a few minutes